we will start off with my notes, and this is what I've been talking about at the beginning of every meeting. So please bear with me. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-25-20 and N-39-20, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act, and pursuant to the order of the Health Officer of the San Mateo County dated June 17, 2020, as this meeting is necessary so that the city can conduct necessary business and is permitted under the orders as an essential governmental function. This meeting is not physically open. City council members and staff essential to this meeting will be video teleconferencing into the meeting, and there will be no physical location open to the public. The public can observe and participate in the meeting while sheltering at home via the Zoom link provided in the agenda or by phone to the dial-in number and webinar ID provided in the agenda. This meeting can also be viewed via live local TV channel 26 or online at www.cityofpacifica.org/live stream. For this meeting, live verbal public comments may be made through participation by Zoom. We will not see your video. For members of the public participating by computer or smartphone using the Zoom link, use the raise hand button next to your name to indicate that you wish to speak on an agenda item or during oral communications when I call upon that agenda item. For those participating by phone, use *9 or *9 to raise your hand and request to speak when that item comes up. The city clerk will call upon speakers at the appropriate time and unmute you to talk after calling you by screen name or the last 4 digits of your phone number. So know the last 4 digits of your phone number if you're not going to have a screen name there. You'll then be prompted to speak and allowed up to 3 minutes or the time limit imposed at my discretion. Please clearly state your full name for the record at the start of your public comment. Written and email public comments will not be read during the meeting. Written public comments received by 4 p.m. are made part of the written record and have already been provided to the City Council before this meeting. And they are also posted to the city's website on the City Council agendas webpage for public reference. Emails will not be monitored for public comment during this meeting. So if you wish to make a public comment during the meeting and have not submitted a comment in writing by 4 p.m. today, please participate via the Zoom access information provided in the agenda and available at the city's website at www.cityofpacifica.org. Okay, so rules of decorum. In order to ensure that all members of the public have an opportunity to speak, there will generally be a 3-minute limitation on comments by the public. However, this 3-minute limitation may be reduced at the discretion of myself, along with my colleagues, depending on the number of speakers wishing to speak and the need to conduct the public's business in a timely manner. I will then open public comment, and each speaker who has indicated that they wish to provide public comment by using the raise hand feature next to your name will be unmuted to allow each speaker to provide the public comment. In order to effectively enforce this rule, the city clerk will monitor the time for each speaker, and after the allotted speaking time is up, I will inform you. Then I will then mute you if you're over the time limit. Please don't make me do that. If you continue speaking over the allotted speaking time. Individual speakers may not speak more than once on any given item. So you can't speak twice or 3 times or after that. It is the policy of the council that all members of the public have the right to address the council, and that right includes the right to make remarks that some may find critical, unpleasant, or even offensive. However, it is also important that the proper standard of behavior be maintained during the meetings and that city council is able to complete the public's business in a timely manner. Therefore, the public should respect order, procedures, and decorum of city council meetings. Persons addressing the city council shall adhere to the time limits, should not make slanderous or obscene remarks, and shall not disrupt the conduct of the meeting by preventing the council from accomplishing its business in a reasonably efficient manner, and shall not make threats against any person or the public. I shall enforce this rule of decorum by ordering speakers to maintain decorum, and I may take steps necessary to restore order to the meeting, including but not limited to gaveling down the speaker, recessing the meeting, or terminating the speaker's rights to the floor. The format of this meeting may be altered, or the meeting may be canceled if needed, if we have any technical issues. So check the city's website if that comes up, www.cityofpacifica.org, for any updates. And that's it for this evening. So I will have a roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Neill, Here.
Councilmember Beer,
Here.
Councilmember Vaterlos,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer. We couldn't hear you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry, because I was muted. Here.
Thank you. Mayor Martin.
Here. Salute to the flag, led by Councilmember Vaterlos.
Okay, ready. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To
to the
the flag
flag of
of
the
the
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation
nation
under God,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
liberty
and
and
justice
justice for all.
for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the consent calendar. We am looking to see if we have any council member Beers raising her hand to maybe pull or make a motion.
Yes, please. Can I pull number 11, item 11?
Okay, let's see, item number 11. And Councilmember Vaterlos? You're on mute.
I would like to pull the item on the election.
Okay, that is item number.
Mayor Martin, that's item number 13.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, I'm number 13. Any other council members? I have one hand raised in the attendee list here. That is so that could be a poll for consent. That's by Tiger Big Stick. Or a comment.
Mayor Martin, I'll go ahead and allow him to speak to which item, if he's speaking on a consent calendar item.
Thank you very much. Briefly on number 3.
Okay, so we will pull number 3. And do I have a motion?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda, except items 3, 10, and 13.
11.
3, 11, and 13.
Second.
A second.
Okay. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, that was moved by Councilmember Vaterlos and seconded by Councilmember O'Neill. Vote Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin,
Yes.
and consent calendar minus items 3, 11, and 13 passes by a vote of 5-0.
Okay. We'll hear Councilmember Beer first on item number 11.
Oh, okay, great. Funny, I really appreciate having read this report, because I think I had forgotten, through all like the pandemic and everything, that I actually really care about housing. So I have some questions. And I see Tina's here. Thank you, Tina. Hello. Hi, thank you. On packet page 191, it says in like the very far column, right? It says Article 47 of Pacifica Municipal Code requires 15% of units to be below market rate. But then when I looked across, there are no like very low or low income columns marked, right? And so I was wondering if at any point in time we would be able to revisit the language to include low income, like, because it just says below market rate. So that was my question, if we were going to be able to maybe look at changing that language.
Sure. So I think my name is Tina Warmeister. I'm the planning director. So if I understand your question, it is that the city's inclusionary housing ordinance allows the developer to include moderate income units in their calculation. And I think if I hear you correctly or understand you correctly, you'd like some greater assurance that some of those units or all of those units would be affordable to those in the very low or low income category. So We will be looking at the the affordable housing in lieu fee study in the future. That was a carryover work plan item, so that'll be coming up this year. And when adjusting in lieu fees for affordable housing, we will necessarily need to also look at this, the inclusionary ordinance, to make sure that we're not like double dipping, so to speak, for developers. So I think the answer to your question, it's a long way of saying yes, that there is going to be an opportunity to review that ordinance in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then action number 3, it talks about develop programs to help preserve the at-risk units at Costa Pacifica. So I just want to request like an update about what's going on with that, so we all know what's going on there. I
Okay, we can
appreciate
do
that.
that.
And then action number 4 talks about the mobile home park, and it says it's a source of low-income housing. So I was just curious if it actually is, because I don't really know. I don't have the data.
Yeah, so the state considers mobile home parks to be an important source of what's called naturally affordable units, and perhaps some of them in the state are deed restricted, but the mobile home park in Pacifica is not deed restricted. So that's the answer to that.
Okay, thank you. There's more. Action number 16 is amending the zoning ordinance to allow emergency shelters and transitional and supportive housing. I just would really like to talk about that, so I want to request that to be on a future agenda. Maybe we can study it, something like that. And then I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question in terms of, I thought a certain number of the mobile home, we're talking about the one on Palmetto, I'm forgetting the name of it, across from the storage units, but there are a certain percentage of those that are supposed to be below market, aren't they?
Not that I am aware of. I could be incorrect on that, but not that I'm aware of.
Because I thought it was a certain percentage of them, kind of similar to what other, projects are, building projects are. So, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I can look further into that. If I'm wrong, I can update the council.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 13. Sue Vardalos?
I just wanted to remind everyone that these are district elections, and only 2 of the districts will be able to vote for council members in this upcoming election. So please go to the city's website and look up district elections and see where you land in the district, and know that not everybody is going to vote for all the council members. We will be now representing districts. 2 districts will be the only ones represented in this election. Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
I had a question for Michelle. When whoever the candidates are, they have to get their 20 signatures. Do they get 20 from only within their district, or is it anybody in Pacifica?
Understanding it's within the district.
Okay, so the candidates can only
check on that. That's a good question.
Okay, so you assume it's just in the district, but you're going to double check that.
Double check.
City Clerk Sarah Coffey. Yes, my understanding is that the signatures would come from voters, registered voters within the district that's up for election.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, great. If no one has anything else, we'll move on to item number 3. And we had a public comment item that was from Tiger Big Stick. So if City Clerk wants to unmute Tiger, you get 3 minutes.
And can you all hear me?
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick of Pacifica. basically, just after the outpouring of public feedback we had on the serve camps during the last meeting, I saw it on consent, and I figured maybe you wanted to tell the public a little bit what this next step is and potentially bringing these nonprofit serve camps to Pacifica. I don't have any particular feedback, but I thought it might benefit the public just to know what this next step is for those who don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. Yeah, so the proposed action is to refer the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission a work item to evaluate and make recommendations on potential changes to the Pacifica Surf Camp school policy for Pacifica State Beach. The discussion came up 2 weeks ago about equity on our beaches. So the recommendation is to have them study that and work with the appropriate groups to try to figure out what's the best way to achieve that goal. Thanks, Tiger, for making that recommendation. Does anyone have anything else? Okay, do I have an motion?
I move that we approve consent items number 3, 11, and 13.
For the motion, Councilmember O'Neill, I'm sorry, we have another hand raised. So I want to be sure that it's not for
sorry.
this item.
Okay, my bad. Okay, I see Jennifer Azalino has a hand raised. Jennifer, is this on one of the consent items, numbers 1 through 13? We will unmute you so you can let us know.
Yes, it's on item number 3.
Okay. Is it okay to open to public comment again, Clerk Coffey?
Yes, we can go ahead with public comment on this.
Okay.
Give me a moment while I start the timer for the speaker.
Okay, as soon as the timer starts, Jennifer, you'll have 3 minutes.
Wonderful. So I was just wondering if the council could elaborate just so that we know what the current policy is. And I think you spoke a little bit to what prompted this request for an evaluation, but I was wondering what the current policy is, number 1. And number 2, how do residents or how would residents participate in this evaluation process? Can you answer that?
Actually, we don't have a dialogue here. This is more of a public comment. But what I could do is ask Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Director Mike Perez if he just wants to touch on it at a very high level, given his information that he received last 2 meetings ago. But we're going to close the public comment, and you will not be allowed to talk back to us at this point. This is just procedural Brown Act stuff. So thank you for your understanding.
And Mayor Martin, Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager, I guess what I would comment on this is that this is a referral to PB&R, and they'll take up the items. So the public meetings that Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission holds will be the process, the initial process for public input. Director Perez can give an overview of what the current policy is. However, this is just a referral, so it's not to discuss the item obviously tonight, but direct the speaker as well to the staff report, which has quite a bit of background and detail about the current policy.
Yeah, just at a very high level, Mike, if you don't mind.
Sure. Good evening, Michael Perez, Parks, Beaches, Recreation Director. So the guidelines and rules and applicant qualifications are an attachment in the staff report. So I would direct anybody that would like to see what our current policies are to see that. But basically, we have 4 surf schools right now. We have 2 large with a limit of 25 students, and we have 2 smaller ones with 12 students. One happens to be a surf shop as well in town, a local surf shop. And annually, people would put their name on the list, apply for it. We've had the same groups for many years, and we haven't had anyone leave. And just a little bit about the process. We don't know exactly what that will be, but I imagine that we will have at our next Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission meeting, which is the 22nd of July, study session meeting combination, or we may, this item may take more than one study session to work on. Those are open to the public. And if people have specific questions, they can always call the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Department to find out more, 738-7381, or send me an email if they need further information.
Thank you, Mike.
Is that good? Okay.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And so Jennifer, check out the agenda and you can look under item number 3 and you'll find out a bunch more information. So thank you, Mike. Sounds like July 22nd, Jennifer, add that to your calendar. All right, so do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve consent items number 3, 11, and 13.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by O'Neill, seconded by Beer. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vetterlos,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin,
Yes.
and consent calendar items number 3, 11, and 13 pass with a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to oral communications. We have a bunch of attendees. If you would like to speak right now is the time to raise your hand. This is on any item that is not on the agenda this evening. Right next to your name, if you hover over it, you'll see a little raise hand function. And right now I'm watching hands being raised. I'm seeing some of them drop back, which may mean that you're waiting for your agenda item to come up. So again, you're raising your hand right now for oral communications. That is for something that is not on the agenda. You will receive 3 minutes. And Sarah, I will hand the floor over to you. We have about 4 hands raised right now.
Mayor Martin, Elizabeth Brooks here, Deputy City Clerk. Good evening, everyone. I'll be calling out our participants, starting with Suzanne Moore, followed by Cheryl Dickinson. When I give you speaking permission, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Suzanne Moore, board member of San Mateo County Healthcare for the Homeless and Farm Workers Health Program. The co-applicant board of the San Mateo County Healthcare for the Homeless Farm Worker Health Program is in support of creating safe parking programs throughout San Mateo County through cooperation and coordination with all involved parties. The Healthcare for the Homeless Board is comprised of local community leaders who oversee the federal program managed by San Mateo County to support the access and delivery of necessary and appropriate healthcare services for the homeless and farm worker communities. Homelessness is a serious ongoing social concern in the Bay Area. With the lack of affordable housing, more and more individuals and families are being forced out of their current homes and either move from the area or become homeless. Many of the Bay Area residents now experiencing homelessness are stable community members who can simply no longer afford the high cost of housing. Furthermore, more and more San Mateo County residents are turning to their vehicles for a place to stay and sleep. The 2017 San Mateo County one-day homeless count found that over 65% of unsheltered homeless individuals were living or sleeping in their cars and RVs, a 34% increase from 2015. Even though the total count of unsheltered homeless persons in the county has continued to drop, the number and percentage of individuals living in their vehicles has increased. Homeless persons living in their vehicles face an increased risk of trauma, health issues, and displacement similar to other unsheltered homeless persons. Continuous moving of locations makes accessing health services and other support services difficult. Safe parking programs provide safe, secure locations for individuals and families, which includes those living in cars, motorhomes, a place to park and sleep. Further, in these types of programs, outreach and essential services are co-located to support the families and individuals involved. To that end, the Healthcare for the Homeless Board opposes efforts to ban overnight parking countywide and encourages the establishment of safe parking locations for the vehicularly housed residents. Without holistic approaches to address the underlying issues, the individuals involved are simply put at a greater risk of harm, health issues, and permanent displacement. Thank you. This was written by the co-applicant board of the San Mateo County Healthcare for the Homeless and Farm Worker Program, signed by co-applicant board chair Brian Greenberg, PhD, and it was dated June 15th of this year.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Next, we'll hear from Cheryl Dickinson. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Dickinson, and I'm a resident of Pacifica. And I'm calling in tonight to bring up the subject of the dreaded fireworks. Most people in the community, just the people I talk to who support safe and sane fireworks, agree that they don't like the illegal fireworks. And that is really, truly the biggest problem in our area. It's become a public safety hazard here because we have a family, I'm not quite sure of their location, that goes around, and if people make complaints on next door, they go around and light fireworks out of their cars in front of people's houses. We also have had a community member show video from their house security of kids on bikes lighting fireworks and then taking off. And it's just very dangerous. We've had somebody also, have somebody throw like an M80 in the middle of the street and they ran over it. I've had bottle rockets go off right over my head while I'm walking my dog at 5 p.m. And it's just getting really out of control. And I know our police department works hard to try to prevent this, but they say if we don't see it, we can't do anything. But we really do need to, get a handle on the illegal fireworks. I don't know that, safe and, getting rid of safe and sane is the answer. And that's, our biggest complaint were fireworks. And then there was a study on getting rid of the safe and sane. But if that's what it takes to get rid of the illegals, that's what we need to do. Also, my homeowner's policy for fire was canceled and the new carrier is not even covering me. So if somebody starts a wildfire and my house burns down, and I have to go out and get new, an additional expensive policy like an earthquake policy. So I urge the council to please take another look at illegal fireworks specifically, and maybe different technology or ways that we can make our community safer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Next, we'll hear from Sherry Chan. Please state your name for the record.
Hi there, my name is Sherry Chan. I'm speaking about item 4.
Sherry, you cut out. What item?
Item 14, Allison West's appeal.
Okay, so raise your hand when that comes back up, okay?
All right, thanks so much. I will lower.
Okay.
We'll move on to Tiger Big Stick.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick of Pacifica. So it was brought to my attention vis-a-vis a planning commission meeting, but my comments have nothing to do with my capacity in planning commission, and it has nothing to do with a specific planning commission item. And so as though I were an observer from the outside, during the meeting, the question was raised of infrastructure in the Rockaway Beach Avenue neighborhood. And what struck me from the speakers were just, they felt like they could use a little bit more TLC, for lack of a better term, from City Council regarding especially their roadway and their sewer infrastructure. And ultimately, this related to concerns of health and safety also. And having driven down that road a number of times, I understand where they're coming from. And what staff indicated was what's necessary at some point is a complete reconstruction of their road. And so I appreciate that we're a city that doesn't have an abundance of money, and that we have a way we allocate funds as we have them on a need-by-need basis. I just wanted to kind of recommend that that roadway maybe should be looked at some point if possible, and probably their sewer infrastructure also when possible. And I don't know when the list of repaving projects is coming up, but if it might not be a bad idea to put them on that list, because again, at some point it winds up being a health and safety issue if that road becomes much worse. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I was pretty overwhelmed by the perceived need and the realities behind it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiger.
Next, we'll hear from Anita Reese.
Hello, Anita Reese with the Pacifica Resource Center. And I just wanted to thank the city and the community again for your ongoing support while we continue to respond to COVID and its impact on Pacifica residents. Our office continues to be open to the community. Monday and Tuesdays, we've expanded our hours. We're now open from 9 a.m. to 3:30, Wednesdays to 10:30 to 7, Thursdays 10:30 to 5, and Fridays 9 to 1. We're available other times, but by phone only. Those other hours are times that the office is open for drop-in. Our core services during our shelter in place are groceries, housing assistance, and services for our unhoused families and individuals. We are providing groceries by delivery to seniors and at-risk families, and primarily by way of a drive-through distribution on Wednesdays in the parking lot at the American Legion Hall at 555 Buell. The distribution on Wednesday starts at 2:30, and folks who are signed up in advance will have a scheduled distribution time, and anybody else who needs groceries can arrive anytime after 3:30 and we'll provide groceries as quickly as possible. If anyone needs help paying your past due rent or July rent, given that currently the moratorium hasn't yet been extended on evictions due to not paying your rent, please contact PRC by phone, email, or via our website. We do have an online application that makes it easier to apply and collect the most important documents. Showers are also continuing to be available to our unhoused individuals and families, but that is by appointment. And thanks to several volunteers, we've been able to offer even more showers. So anyone who is unhoused can come to PRC for help. We're also recruiting for 3 new staff members. We have 2 outreach specialist positions open for our Unhoused on the Coast outreach work and a case manager. Those job announcements can be found on Indeed.com. Lastly, keep talking about the census because it's really important to get as many people as possible counted during the census. An accurate count means even more funding for vital needs in the community. So it can be completed at my2020census.gov or by phone at 844-330-2020. Please contact PRC at 650-738-7470 or by our website or by email. If you or someone you know need help with groceries, financial assistance for rent, mortgage, or other critical needs, access to homeless services, or help completing the census. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
We'll now hear from Alexander Przajny.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Now, did I understand that I can only speak on one topic that's not on the agenda, or may I touch 2 topics?
You can touch 2 topics as long as neither of them are on the agenda and you have to be within the 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So the first one, I'd like to respond to Suzanne Moore about the safe parking program for the RVs. And I have to say that the safe parking program, we've been trying to find out what it entails and cannot find any details about it. I'm all for people being able to park safely in their RVs, but it looks like the plan has to do with distributing RVs throughout Pacifica on city streets and in residential areas where there are no facilities, there are no showers and toilets and access to health care. And a huge concern to the health of the communities that would be affected and the safety because of the way they obstruct the view of traffic. And, you know, there are many issues there that I think we've all been, you know, writing in about. So I really, really would like to know what is that parking plan, and I think that the public should have the ability to weigh in on it too. It's gone on so long that something's being decided and planned for our communities without our participation. So I would like to see some kind of a dedicated area with facilities to help people in need. It seems to me it has to be a large area. That's why we keep talking about the county fairgrounds, which I understand are open right now. Some place where people can be, but to distribute them throughout our communities, I think is unsafe, unhealthy, and we've seen evidence of that. So I really hope that you guys will expose, or expose, that might not be the right word, but, let the details of that plan out as soon as possible, please. Okay, my other thing is about the Redwood Way antenna that was approved at the Planning Commission. And you have some emails there and some input from people asking if you would please consider waiving the appeals fee for that facility. It was approved when people couldn't come and contribute to the conversation. There were some very, very real concerns about it, and I think that it was really premature for planning to go ahead and approve that. And I applaud the two commissioners who did vote against that. And then, so I hope you will consider, because people are low on money, losing jobs, and and really concerned about health right now. But you can read my comment that I did put in, as I hope you'll be reading all of them. And so then I'd just like to finish up by thanking Anita for your help serving Pacificans in need. And for all of you guys, what you're doing right now. I understand that there's a lot going on, and we're all coming in here with our concerns, asking you to consider those too. So with that, I sign off. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Next, we'll invite Ellen to speak. Ellen, please state your name for the record.
Oops. Ellen Haig.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Ellen Haig. I'm a Pacifica homeowner and member of Faith in Action Bay Area and Pacifica Housing for All. I'd like to express my gratitude, first of all, to the staff of Pacifica Resource Center and all essential workers for their efforts during the pandemic. Today, I spoke with one of our community members who is living in his motorhome. Being a full-time student and living in a motorhome while shelter in place, needing to complete his college classes on Zoom and having to practice shelter in place has put a great strain on him. He barely made it through school. He is currently looking for housing, and the odd jobs that kept him going while in school have all dried up because of shelter in place. This brings even more strain on him. The following are his words. Fortunately, I have a therapist and a psychiatrist I meet with on a weekly basis, and good friends have helped me keep my sanity during this time. To think I'd have to up and move with zero finances when everything I need is here in Pacifica is more than I can bear. I need that safe place to lay my head every 24 hours. So please, I urge you to pass this much needed parking program for people living in their motorhomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Next, we'll hear from Carolyn Jaramillo.
Yes, good evening. My name is Carolyn Jaramillo. I'm a Pacifica homeowner and a member of Pacifica Housing for All. And I too wish to thank the staff in the Pacifica Resource Center and all essential workers for keeping the city up and running during this pandemic. I'm speaking tonight for all the homeless people sleeping in a vehicle or on the streets here in Pacifica. Before the pandemic, the council was asked to consider a plan for a parking permit pilot program. I recall that Councilmember Beer agreed to sign the oversized vehicle ordinance only if there was a good faith agreement that a permitted parking program would also be approved. What is the status of that program? The oversized vehicle ordinance is now on the books. I urge you to pass this much needed parking program for people living in motorhomes and to promote the program by publicizing the correct information about it. The city has not publicized any of the elements of this program, and now there is much information and fear that needs to be dispelled. Please promote the program as a partnership with the faith community that would provide temporary safety to those living in motorhomes. It's not a permanent program, it will be temporary. To be eligible, participants must be vetted by the PRC and required to pay a small fee and to sign an agreement with 27 different requirements. This program is small and will accommodate 20 motorhomes at the most, 10 spaces provided by the city and 10 by the churches. This program has been talked about and forgotten about at many meetings. Please put it on the agenda and pass it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Carolyn. I don't see any other hands raised. If no one has anything else for oral communications, I will close oral communications and move on to council communications. Any council members like to speak? Can you hear me? Anyone want to speak? No? Oh, Mike? You're up.
I just kind of wanted to address the concerns because I know we're all getting a lot of emails about the illegal fireworks. And I've been on the task force that we studied looking for a solution on 2 different task force, I believe, like within the last 3, 4, maybe 5 years. And the problem is they're illegal now, and the restrictions in terms of basically the police have to see someone let it go and light the match. We did pass a social host ordinance so that the property owner, if they don't have to, if they do it from the backyard and they see it flying over the house, then the property owner will be fined $1,000, which is the maximum the state of California allows the city to impose. So at this point, I think the city is very open to any ideas a citizen might have. They are illegal, and we acknowledge that, and we would love to do something about it. But I don't. If Chief Steidel was on that panel also, but we have really no ideas, technology or otherwise, that would work. So I just wanted to kind of address that. The council has looked at this. The council's tried to do it. We've done everything, to my knowledge, that we can do about it. So I just kind of wanted to put that out. That's all.
Thanks, Mike. Sue Barros.
Okay. I went to so many Zoom meetings. I have Zoom fatigue. COVID elected officials twice a week, Association of Bay Area Governments, City and County Association of Governments, legislative regular. I'm on the San Mateo County Community Recovery Group to help with recovery from the virus and to help people get back to normal. I listened to how to keep your business going during the COVID. And the San Mateo County Office of Emergency Services, we talked a lot about PG&E, which I discussed before about this synchronization. And so they will not have to shut off quite so many areas if they do have a public service shut off. It'll be a lot better. Also, the Democrats featured Don Horsley, and he's always really good to listen to. I never usually comment on the public comment, but I really have to say that every single meeting, we're told that we have a parking program. I have never seen a parking program There isn't a parking program to my knowledge. And people keep blaming us for hiding the parking program that I've never seen. So I just, there's no hiding because we haven't seen a parking program. We do have an unhoused task force that is not a city committee, that it's an outside committee that is supposed to be making a parking program, but they've not presented that to us. And I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Can I go? Sure. I attended the City of Pacifica Economic Development Committee meeting. And one of the items that we discussed, which has been reported here, but I just want to restate because some of the members of that committee didn't have the information, is that 6 businesses through the San Mateo County Strong grant program, 6 local businesses received $10,000 in funding for each of their businesses. And this is an effort on the part of the county, along with a number of individual donors and corporate donors and city donors, to shore up small businesses and to help them survive, and when so many of them had to be closed during COVID. I mean, initially everybody did, but then until very recently, restaurants couldn't be open even for outdoor. We've had a number of issues that our small businesses have faced and are persevering through. And so for Pacifica thus far, we have Early Bird Infant and Child Care on Palmetto Avenue, A Grape in the Fog in Rockaway, Anderson's Swim and Scuba in, near Eureka Square, Soul Grind in Pedro Point, and The Traveler in Pedro Point, and Coastside Integrative Medicine Group doing business as Time Integrative Practice, which I understand is also in Rockaway. We're waiting for information on the 5 additional businesses that would be receiving grants, with the additional $50,000 in funding that Pacifica donated to this cause and to this purpose. And so I've spoken with a number of individuals associated with these businesses, and they are very grateful and truly in a position where if they didn't have this funding, they're not sure they could make it. A few of them have received PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, forgivable loans. A couple have received EIDL loans through the Small Business Association. That all takes a ton of effort and tracking and following. And so just really trying to support that effort and keep those businesses in mind and keep the communication going in partnership with the Pacifica Chamber to get the word out. As I stated, we have restaurants that have been able to reopen for outdoor dining. And that is a good thing, and grateful to the city staff for working so hard, so quickly to prepare the ordinance or the guidelines for Pacifica's interpretation, and what, with regard to our ordinances and our permitting process, so that if an individual business has a proposal for that, they can work directly with our planning department and get that fast track approval. The need will be, of course, to go back after the emergencies order and the emergency period is lifted to address that through our normal permitting process. But Director Wermeister and our city attorneys work very, very hard, very quickly to get that done. And for more information, I urge anyone interested to go to the planning department website or to check with the planning department. I also attended a meeting of the Association of Bay Area Governments General Assembly on the 11th, and that was very enlightening. Councilmember Beer was there with me, and well, we weren't there. We were on Hollywood Squares, but we were there in our little tiny square because there were a lot of people attending that meeting from all over the Bay Area, not just San Mateo County, not just the 5-county Bay Area. I mean, like the 9-county Bay Area. So a lot of very valuable information came out of it for me in terms of looking at what other cities are doing and, you know, hopefully what we may have an opportunity to do, and some updates on different legislation that I need to do more homework on and understand better. And Councilwoman Vaterlas, I hope I can contact you about that because of the CKEG Ledge meeting that you've been to. I'm sure a number of those same bills that are working their way through the state, you have information on. I'd like to share notes and try to bring forward some information for the public on that, just because we talk about all these things that are going on, but giving specifics to people so they really understand it is, I think, a big need. So I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Councilmember Vardalos, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No,
Okay.
I'll be in touch with her. There are a lot of bills.
I'll go ahead and go. Thank you for reminding me about my homework, Councilmember Beck. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of information on bills, and it was really good for me to be there and to listen. It was a good kind of initiation back into the groove of my responsibilities on council. So thank you for reminding me of that. So I'm going to take a minute and express my thanks to the community of Pacifica. Thank you to our law enforcement and for Chief Seidel for having the study session last week. It was a really important conversation that we had. I've been getting a lot of questions about kind of like where I stand, and so I have something written down, so I'm gonna read it. I feel like I wasn't able to say all the things that I wanted to express last week at the study session. So I've expressed publicly my support for our law enforcement. And as many of you know, I have worked very closely with them over the years through the Pacifica Prevention Partnership. And it's that kind of community engagement that really makes our police department super exceptional. I also know that it's time to take a really deep look into the systemic racism that exists in every community. I'm proud and thankful that Chief Steidel was willing to begin this conversation by looking into the policies and procedures within his department. He was also willing to listen, to really listen to members of the community when they spoke of their experiences. And as a privileged white woman, it is also very important for me to listen carefully and learn. This way I can take the steps to continue the conversation in our community alongside our police department and make changes when they are needed. And having these discussions does not mean that I do not have faith in our police department. It's quite the opposite. You know, I trust fully that Chief Steidel has the intelligence and the compassion it needs to be able to engage in these conversations during such an extreme time in our history. And without his willingness, we would not be able to move forward, and this would cause even more unrest than there is already. So Chief, thank you very much. And I want to thank all of the people who showed up and who shared their experiences. Those stories and those experiences are really important for us to understand. I know that there's a lot of other community groups that are having these conversations. There was one at my church on Friday night when we discussed the movie The 13th, the movie 13th. It was a really deep, important conversation where we heard stories from our young people. So those stories and those experiences are really important. Please keep bringing them to us. You know, it's such a huge thing, but if we all do our part, and I mean everybody, to listen and to learn and to take time to really dig deep, then we can make some differences. So I have faith that as a community and as leaders that we're going to be able to do that. And again, I just wanted to thank the community of Pacifica for coming out, and thank you, Chief Steidel, for being willing to do all that you did. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. I just want to tack on to that. Thank you. For those that don't know, we did have a policing in Pacifica related to racial equity use of force study session last Wednesday night. It was very well attended. We had a lot of really great speakers, and thankful for the police department, you know, for being willing to listen. And part of being a good listener is also being receptive to constructive feedback. So when Chief hears this, he's taking this back and communicating with his officers what they're hearing. And this is just the beginning. So we're going to continue having this discussion. I've been getting a lot of emails and phone calls about, well, what are our next steps? So we're storming and forming right now and really sort of figuring out what that looks like. Last Wednesday's meeting was a really good start. So, and I just want to give props to Chief Steidel. You know, over a year ago, I met with Chief and a community member about racial inequity and bias in language, and he was very willing and open to have those discussions. I'm also meeting with him and a community member tomorrow about some of the same stuff. What are we doing? And this was planned well before any of this stuff came up. I also wanted to make note that I've seen some stuff on social media that there may be some opportunists out there taking advantage of this very delicate situation using graffiti or hate mail, and it will not be tolerated. I'm thinking that some of this stuff is hoax worthy and just really awful opportunists for I don't know who or what, but just know that but hate will not be tolerated. Pacifica stands united against hate. We ran that campaign in November and we stand by it. I just wanted to remind you of a couple community events. The paper shredding event hosted by Ecology has been pushed out to August 8th. It'll begin at 8 a.m. and that's at the recycling yard at 1046 Palmetto. Also, just a reminder that large styrofoam and cardboard can be dropped off in front of the offices from Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 1. That's an amazing opportunity right there, folks, because I can tell you, if you're getting things delivered to your house, you have to wait week after week to fill up your can. You can just drop it over there yourself. So thank you to Ecology. And also I want to thank Ecology and the City of Pacifica for working together to try to work on the issue that we've been having around town with dumping. So you'll see, hopefully, some of those hot spots cleaned up a little bit. So thank you to Ecology and the city for working on that. I wanted to remind everyone about the Streets to Beaches program. I'm probably not saying that right. I can't remember. It's like, it's through the Pacific Beach Coalition, and it's cleaning up your streets, cleaning up the beaches, but it's out on your own. And log on to the Pacific Beach Coalition's website. You can track what you're picking up. You get you earn badges. It's a really neat and fun opportunity for the whole family. And every year, the Beach Coalition dedicates all of their effort to an endangered or threatened species. This year and into next, we will be dedicating all our efforts to the albatross. This coming, I think it's Friday night, June 25th, there's going to be an evening with the albatross. You can view a little movie and then have a little talk. You can find out more information about that on the Beach Coalition's website. So thank you. And then I just wanted to also remind everyone, Mike, you talked about fireworks, but this year, while we are selling fireworks, we're not allowing fireworks where we typically have allowed them. The council agreed to that. We do not want gatherings. This COVID situation is still real, and the county health officer does not believe that we are out of the woods, and we are not. So we should all be listening to the mandate by the governor to be masking up when we're in public places. This is not just for our protection. This is for others who are vulnerable's protection. Those that have many issues or are in a vulnerable population. So you'll see a lot of businesses being open, and please abide by the rule. If it says mask up, mask up. I got to sit at my desk all day with my mask on my face. Do I like it? No, but it's the next step in trying to get to where we need to be. So thank you, everyone. And just remember, we're not out of the woods, and we're here for each other. So wearing a mask is respect for another. Anyone have anything else? Okay, we will move on to staff communications.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Martin and council members. Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I have a few brief communications. as was mentioned by some of the council members, last Wednesday night's study session regarding policing in Pacifica was well attended, and we heard a lot of great input and input from both the community and the council. And the police chief and I are debriefing on all of that input. The comments that were provided, as well as the chat questions that were provided, are being provided publicly on the city's website. And we'll be pushing out information about when and where that's available. And some of it is already up there, I believe. But we will be debriefing and brainstorming next steps and putting together a work plan to bring back to the council at some point in the future. I don't know, but depending on our agenda item later tonight about our summertime agenda planning, I'm not sure which session that will be, but we're working on that. Also, I wanted to mention the new, while that's all going on, we have the coronavirus response stuff still going on. New county health officer order from Friday that aligns our county and harmonizes our county with the state requirements. There's a lot of information in there, and I'd encourage businesses as well as members of the public interested to look at the press release as well as the state information and the county health order on the city's coronavirus webpage. A lot more businesses are opened up according to certain guidelines, and there's a concept of a social bubble that is expanding social interactions that is all as a whole rather complicated, but the intention of the county is to really be following what the state requirements are. So the city may be getting a lot of questions about what can or can't be done, and we'll be referring that information to the state guidelines. The state, is providing information. The county does have FAQs to try to answer some of those questions. But what I really want to emphasize is that while we seem to be continuing our reopening process, at the same time, and you hear this everywhere, and you hear it around the state as well as around the country, there is still a lot of concern about daily cases of COVID-19 and surges that are expected to come. So all of the health practices, wearing masks and physically distancing still remain, and washing your hands, et cetera, still remain as important as ever. So just to emphasize that point. On a changing subjects, on a different note, I did meet last week with Public Works and the general manager of the county flood and sea level rise resiliency district to become acquainted. Actually, Len Matterman is the general manager, and he and I worked together years ago when I was in Mountain View. But we had a good conversation, introductory conversation about our interrelationship as it relates to the numerous infrastructure preservation projects we have along the coast, and what the resiliency district may be able to assist us with on those projects. So that was a productive meeting, and that completes my communications.
Thank you. Kevin, anyone have anything for Kevin? Okay, great. So we will move on to a public hearing we have this evening. We have consideration of an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval with conditions of coastal development permit CDP-413-19 to demolish an existing single-family residence and detached garage, and to construct a new 1,753-foot, two-story single-family residence, a new 236 square foot detached one-car garage, and a new 216 square foot carport on a 3,516 square foot lot at 277 Kent. And the APN is there, and finding the project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. So we will prompt any council members to disclose any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications. I will disclose that I have met with and walked the property, the folks who are submitting the appeal. Mike, you're on mute.
Sorry. I did chat on the phone with the appellant of the property, of the appellant coming forward. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't speak to anybody on this one. I was thinking of the cell tower. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else? Sue Beckmeyer?
I had a phone chat with one of the builders of the project.
Okay. All right. So staff, we have a report.
Good evening, council members. I am Assistant Planner Helen Gannon. As just introduced, the application for your consideration tonight is a coastal development permit for the construction of a new 2-story single-family dwelling proposed on an existing developed lot located at 277 Kent Road in the Pedro Point neighborhood. The proposed project was approved by the Planning Commission by a 4-0 vote on April 20th, but was appealed on April 30th. The project plans for the proposed development include demolition of an existing single-family residence in a detached garage and barn, and construction of a new single-family residence, detached 1-car garage, and a carport on a 3,516 square foot non-conforming lot. The project complies with all zoning standards, including standards applicable to development on non-conforming lots. Vehicle access is proposed off Kent Road in keeping with the existing single-family development pattern at the site and along the streetscape. There are both residential and non-residential uses in the project vicinity. The appellant identifies several bases for her objection to the Planning Commission's approval. The first is that the project is not categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, due to the erosion and other hazards. As explained further in staff report, the Planning Commission considered and determined the project to be categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines, sections 15303, for new construction of one single-family residence. Section 15300.2 of the CEQA guidelines describes circumstances under which the exemptions may be inapplicable. The Planning Commission again considered these exceptions to application of a categorical exemption and found that none of these exceptions apply to the project. The appellant is unclear on how any hazards potentially affecting the project site would constitute an environmental issue for purposes of CEQA analysis. The city evaluated hazards which may be present on the site and concluded that there is no evidence in the record to demonstrate that the coastal erosion and or seismically induced hazards warrant further review under CEQA. The appellant's second basis claims that the project does not meet the city's required 100-year design life requirement. This requirement is found in the city's local coastal land use plan and states that the Bluff, Setback, and overall design lifetime of a project shall be adequate to accommodate a minimum 100-year hazard event. All appropriate setbacks should be determined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the site-specific circumstances and hazards. The applicant prepared a site-specific geotechnical analysis prepared by a qualified professional geotechnical engineer based on actual observed erosion rates between years 1955 and 2000. The analysis indicated that bluff erosion based on the rates historically observed at the site over the next 100 years was projected between 10 and 40 feet. With this level of projected erosion over 100 years, erosion would reach the northernmost corner of the property, but would not affect the project site, and by extension, erosion would not reach the proposed structure. However, because the southernmost side of the Shelter Cove Road is more than 40 feet from the closest portion on the bluff, it would be very unlikely that bluff erosion reaches the property. The geotechnical engineer also evaluated a more severe potential erosion scenario based on a shorter period of more recent erosion observations between 2002 and 2018, including several years with severe storms, and calculated that 58 to 62 feet of projected erosion would occur over the next 100 years. Even under the most severe scenario, erosion would reach approximately 8 to 10 feet into the rear of the property over 100 years and would not affect the proposed structure, which has a rear setback of more than 21 feet. The geotechnical analysis did identify the potential for seismically induced landslide on the site, but indicated the site is underlain by competent bedrock materials, which will enable a suitable foundation design to mitigate this hazard. Therefore, the geotechnical engineer concluded that large-scale seismically induced landslide risk is relatively low for the site if all structures are constructed with the recommended foundation design. There's no information to suggest that the proposed development will be subject to high geologic flood or fire hazard during its design lifetime. The third basis made by the appellant is that the city was required to merge the subject non-conforming lot with the adjacent lot. Although the appellant does not state which adjacent lots should be merged, staff believes that the appellant is referring to the adjacent lot located at the north quadrant of the intersection of Kent Road and Danman Avenue in the 1200 block of Danman. And that is the yellow outlined property that you can see here on the screen that Ms. Coffey is sharing. The criteria for merger of non-conforming lots are contained in the Pacifica Municipal Code section 10-1.1201. However, based on the information provided, the Planning Commission concluded that the subject lot does not meet the criteria in subsection A for merger with the adjacent lots in common ownership for several reasons. Firstly, the historical use of 277 Kent was residential, while the historic use of the adjacent parcel has been commercial use. Because the structures on both lots were constructed between 1915 and 1930, when the county did not impose building permit requirements on commercial or residential structures, both affected lots are developed by structures for which building permits were not required at the time of construction. Secondly, neither site is developed with only an accessory structure or structures. Lastly, neither site is developed with a structure other than an accessory structure, which is also partially sited on the other site. Therefore, the Planning Commission found that merger of these lots was not warranted. And the image that's up on the screen right now shows the two separate lots. So in red, you'll see the proposed project here at 277 Kent, and right next door is what many know is 1300 Danman in the yellow. And both of these have recorded lot mergers that were back in the 80s. And so Sarah, if you could click on the next slide, please. You'll see the two, it's some pretty poor quality because they're from a bit ago, but the two recorded lot mergers for both 277 Kent and the adjacent parcel that we believe the appellant is discussing. Appeal issue number 4 relates to the project biologist's observation that one California slender salamander was present at the project site, which the appellant claims should cause an EIR to be prepared. She also claims that the city denied protection of the species. On March 10th of this year, the Planning Department staff received a comment from the California Coastal Commission, which noted the presence of the salamander on or adjacent to the project site by the applicant's biologist. As determined by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the California slender salamander is not a special status species, Therefore, there are no special requirements under CEQA or any other law to further study the presence of the salamander prior to making a determination on the pending discretionary action. The appellant's fifth and final appeal basis is that the city is possibly in violation of SB 379. California Senate Bill 379 requires all cities and counties to include climate adaptation strategies, goals, and policies in their general plans. If the local agency has a local hazard mitigation plan beginning on January 1st of 2017, the law requires that the public agency revise the plan to address climate adaptation and resiliency, and the plan can be incorporated by reference into the agency's general plan safety element. Based on the facts that the city revised the local hazard mitigation plan back in 2016 in accordance with the timeline specified in SB 379, and nothing in the local coastal hazard plan precludes the issuance of a development permit for the project, there is no evidence in the record to support that the Planning Commission's approval of the development permit violates SB 379. At the Planning Commission hearing on April 20th, the Commission took time to consider all of these issues and did not find any of them to warrant a denial of the permit. Because of these reasons, staff recommends denying the appeal and upholding the Planning Commission's approval of Coastal Development Permit CDP 413-19. Staff is available to answer any questions on its analysis of the project or the appeal, and we are also joined by Planning Commissioner Big Stick, who can comment on the Planning Commission's deliberation and action on the permit. And Sarah, when you can, if you could just maybe slowly click through the next few slides, they just provide some elevations and site plans of the proposed project for you all to see. Thank you.
Okay, does council have any questions? I don't see any hands raised. I do. Commissioner Big Stick, there was 4-0 vote. That means there was 4 commissioners present out of 7, or is there 7? Or
Yeah. So that evening, Rich Campbell, who was there with us, recused himself on account of receiving some sort of gift. And so there were 5 of us with 1 recusal. I believe Commissioner Clifford was not there, of course, and also Commissioner Rubenstein was not present that night.
okay, thanks. And Helen, there's no EIR required on this, is that right?
Correct. The CEQA exemption allowed us to determine that there was no significant impact.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no questions from council, then I will invite the appellant to speak for 10 minutes. And I think we have Allison West here.
Mayor Martin, just one moment while I bring the appellant up to speak.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, you may also want to clarify with the appellant any rebuttal time.
Yes, that's correct. So Allison, if you can hear me, you have 10 minutes to speak. Do you want to reserve up to 3 minutes on the back end for rebuttal and we'll adjust the timer, or do you want to take your full 10 up front?
I'll do with a rebuttal.
Okay, great. So City Clerk, you have that. Okay, you have the floor, Allison.
So there is a PowerPoint that should be up there first. So if you could stop the clock until that is up there, please.
Yes. Bear with us, folks.
Okay, I'm bringing up the slideshow right now. Just let me know, Ms. West, when you're able to see that, and then I'll start the clock. I think that I can just display the one at a time.
Yeah, I'll tell you when to hit the next slide.
Okay. And then you can just give me the verbal cue for when to promote to the next slide.
We cannot see it. Okay, now we can.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I have 3 points to discuss tonight, and hopefully you won't find the PowerPoint too painful. It's mostly pictures, so it shouldn't be too bad. So if you could turn to the next, go to the next slide. All right, so these are the 3 key areas that I want to discuss this evening. One, the substandard lot merger. I disagree with what Helen, excuse me, I don't see your last name, so forgive me for not saying your last name. We disagree with the planning department. So I'll go into the issues related to the lot merger. We believe the project is not exempt from CEQA. And when I say we, I am talking on behalf of, I don't even know how many, like dozens and dozens of neighbors within Pedro Point. And also the city blatantly disregarded recommendations from the Coastal Commission. So those are the 3 key areas, and those will be broken down. If you could go to the next slide, please. All right. So I had written to, or we had written to Christian, and he sent us these same documents, which are up on the screen that were just shown by Helen as well. So it does show that the lots were merged. So that really begs the question, if the lots were merged, why are the way the property design and the way the different projects are being put forward treated as though they are not part of one big lot? So you can see that all lots were merged to make lot 3. It is difficult to read. And then on the other one, it says lots 3 and 40 were also merged. So the reality is this is one big lot, and we're uncertain why you're treating it as two, like essentially different parcels. If you could go to the next slide, please. So even the developer's own historical consultant considered this to be one project and not two. That's how he or she described what the lot, what the project was. If you can go to the next slide, please. And boy, this should really make some of you very happy that we actually agree with some of the realtors that this is one project. So you can see that this is on realtor.com. You can see that the property was sold as one lot. Yes, that's it. One address, one lot. So that means it's been merged. So that means that the applicant filed incorrectly. So meaning looking at it as sort of a subdivision without going through the process of making it into a subdivision, which means it would change size and everything else related to the project. So we feel strongly that that is in error. And, you've already conceded that it was merged. So I'm not really sure what the issue is with that. The other part is, if you could go to the next slide, please. Oh, actually back up, if you could back up again. So the other part is that we just saw, so forgive me, I'm reading from the staff report, that the first historic use of 277 Kent Road was residential, and talks about having a architectural historian that went back and looked and could see that the land use was residential. And what is most perplexing is what's written in the report, in the staff report. Secondly, neither site is developed with only an accessory structure or structures. So that's what's there, right? It's just an old barn, a shed, and an old house that's there. But instead of commercial structure related to the prior commercial use of the 1300 Danman Avenue site. So that's the site directly below the Kent one. It says, lastly, neither site is developed with a structure other than an accessory structure. So they're trying to say that it's different uses. So one is commercial. There's no historical evidence produced. So this historian has stated that there may have been commercial use, may have, but these structures burned down, they think, in the early 20th, burned down in the 20th century. So there's no evidence produced. So what does that mean? I'm a lawyer. It means if there's no evidence produced, there is no evidence. So therefore, these are residential, and the only verified historical use on all the lots is residential. Staff acknowledges they're only an auxiliary structure, not a commercial structure, an auxiliary structure on 1300 Danman that is most likely associated and partially sited at 277 Kent Road. So the whole application, we believe, is an error and defective. Okay, to the next, please. All right, according to the city's own map, like when the planners say that there's no hazard zone, here it is, ta-da. Please go to the next one. You can see this is the city zone. Existing conditions of bluff failure at the proposed building site. CEQA exemption is not appropriate because having houses fall into the ocean would be a hazard. So one of the things that we've shown you is these are pictures of what has been going on. A concrete slab falling in, new erosion, 10 feet of the bluff, you can see it there. So we're just wondering how the city can not take into account the the geological services standard as opposed to the technical people that created the report. If you could go to the next slide.
Ms. West, you have 1 minute for wrap up right now.
Okay, thank you. Please go to the next slide. All right, so you can see this is an active bluff. I encourage all of you to take the time to look at this YouTube video shot by Dave Kent, and it shows that at least 10 feet of land has actually fallen into the ocean since 2016. If you could go to the next slide, you can see where the erosion is. So the geoforensics folks reported historic erosion rates at the point of 0.1 to 0.45 a year. But guess what? The USGS actually says it's 1.5 feet. So we think that it is complete error for you not to have found that, and that they have found it is actually 2.3 feet per year. So there's a video of Tina Wermeister saying like, well, like the house may just fall in and so we'll have to move it. That is not acceptable. You put the risk on the city of Pacifica and all the residents to have to pay. Please go to the next slide.
And Ms. West, the timer for the 7 minutes is up right now.
Okay, thank you.
Are you finished, or did you have a wrap up?
I would really like to just take just another moment to wrap up, given the hesitancy with switching the slides. If you could provide me with just another minute, I'd be appreciative.
At the mayor's discretion.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. There are known hydrology hazards, and there needs to be further hydrology studies. This property is located at a downward slope. That's a picture shown today, so you can see the angle of the slope. The applicant admitted to not having a hydrology hazard study done. We think an EIR is important because of the water drainage that happens at this particular site. Next slide, please. Also, this is simply, you can all see it for yourself. This is a note from Julia at the Coastal Commission, writing to the City of Pacifica, talking about the USGS historical retreat rate. So we've provided that as evidence. If you could go to the next slide. And the other part that the Coastal Commission wanted is for the city to ask the applicant to indemnify the city. The city has paid, who knows, millions of dollars in, for houses falling in. We think that that's something that needs to be included as well. And as well, new structures or infrastructure that will require new protection, right? That is part of the climate risk adaptation strategy. So that's not happening here. They can't look at any armory or other sort of mitigation to help them in this situation. Next slide. And the salamander, we don't need to go into. The next one is just a summary slide that we provided. So I will end my time now.
Thank you, Allison. Council, do you have any questions for the appellant? Councilmember Vardalos.
The city said that one of the parcels was commercial and the other one was residential. They have separate addresses. One is a Danman address and one is a Kent address. So if you could explain why you think those are the same parcel.
Because we looked at the merger lot, because that's the documentation that was provided to us that shows it is one parcel. If you look at what realtor.com showed, one parcel, one plot, it used the Kent land. So I'm not sure how they did this, and it's beyond my area of expertise or what I understand. I can only go by what the legal documents show, which is that it is one lot. So I'd like to know the answer as well.
Any other council members? So you have a few minutes left. Doesn't sound like any council members have any other questions for you, Allison. Do you want to take a few minutes to wrap it up? Is the rebuttal?
Rebuttal is at the end of the public testimony.
Thank you. Okay. So since there's no questions for the appellant, I'm going to invite the applicant to speak now.
And Mayor Martin, just give me a moment while I bring the applicant representatives up for comment.
Okay. So the applicant, okay.
Do you want, Mayor Martin, do you want me to stop my video?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so who's going to be speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, Council. This is Mike O'Connell. I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, great. So Mike, you have 10 minutes to speak. Do you want to reserve up to 3 minutes for rebuttal at the end?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I'll just start by saying that.
Well, hang on a sec. Let's wait till you get a timer here so you can see what you have. Okay, go.
Great. I'll start by saying that we are in agreement with the staff report, and we don't take any exception to anything in the report or any of the conditions of approval on the project. I do want to address a couple things about the Bluff retreat and hydrology. So I'll do hydrology first, and then I'll talk quickly about the Bluff retreat, and I'll turn it over to Dan Dykman, our geotechnical engineer. The appellant incorrectly stated that we did not do a hydrology study. We did complete a hydrology study that was required by the Pacifica Engineering Department, where we analyzed the impact of runoff from the site during a 100-year storm. And regarding the Bluff retreat, there was a question about why we ignored the USGS maps, I think is what the appellant said. We didn't ignore them. We took them into account. And what those maps tell you is when you need to do a more detailed site-specific study. And that is what those maps say, is that it's appropriate at the site to do that study. There is a disclaimer at the very first page of that document that says the USGS maps are not intended for comprehensive, detailed site-specific analysis of any kind of retreats, but they're used as a guide for the local agencies to determine where it would be appropriate to do a site-specific analysis. And so with that, I'll mention that the building itself is between 111 feet on the west side and 123 feet on the east side. That's the setback from the bluff. I think the appellant had some pictures that had some incorrect dimensions on it, not measuring from the correct location. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Dykman, our geotechnical engineer, to elaborate on that.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for hearing us out. I did the site-specific Bluff retreat study. The first part of the study, which we did, covered historic aerial photographs that were taken between 1945 and 2000. We took several points along the bluff and measured how far they moved during that period of time, and then assumed that rate would continue on into the future. There were questions raised about the potential for things happening more quickly currently. So we did a second study where we were using Google Earth photographs, because aerial photographs are no longer being taken anymore because of Google Earth. So we used the period of 2002 through 2018 to monitor several points again to see what the rate of bluff retreat was. The bluff retreat that we talk about is overall bluff retreat. You can have some superficial sloughing, such as they've had underneath the concrete patio that was, or parking area that was out there near the bluff, which is actually filled, which has failed as a result of poor drainage. We don't call that bluff retreat because it's not the wave action or anything else acting upon the bluff itself. So while things may look like they've gone a little more in a certain area, it's really not as a result of bluff retreat. You'll also notice that bluff retreat tends to be episodic. We tend to lose chunks of ground at a time, and then we'll go for years and years without anything else going on. So to take something over a very short period of time, I'm not even terribly comfortable with the 16 years as being a true rate. I would actually add it to the other ones if we want a more realistic rate of bluff retreat overall. So we're very confident in the study that we've done. We think we've done all the things that are normally done for this type of a project. Same things I've done on some of the other houses that are up on Kent Road. We did the same bluff retreat studies for those. So I think that the staff is very well understood what we need to do. And I thought they actually did a very good job of presenting. I actually follow along and read with what they were talking about. So that's all I have to say about it. Got any questions? Happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Oh, look, Mary had her hand up. Do you mind?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So most of the questions that I had were actually asked and answered it in the Planning Commission's notes. But one of them, I think it might be a good idea to just talk a little bit more about, and that is maximizing the setback, because that was one of the Coastal Commission's recommendations, right? Am I reading that right? And is that a possibility to do on this project, or maybe you can elaborate on that?
Is that a question for the applicant or for staff?
For you.
Okay. So there is some distance between the back of the garage as it's proposed and the front of the house. So, you know, there are a few feet in there to which you can move the house closer to the garage, thereby increasing that setback.
And so would that be something that you would be able to do? I mean, or is that gonna change the whole?
No, it could be reasonably accommodated.
It could be, okay. Thank you. I appreciate your honest answer to that question. I personally was interested in that question because, you know, I've watched that road just go out from underneath us. You know, I used to walk that road all the time. And so there is definitely bluff erosion there. And so that is one concern of mine. So thanks for hearing me out and answering my questions. I appreciate it a lot.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer.
So my question is for Mr. Dykeman in regard to the studies that have been done on the other properties on Kent Road as compared to the studies done for this project. Had you seen significant, I have no idea of when those other projects were done, how long ago. Did you see movement? Did you see anything that indicated to you the rate of erosion or any changes to your former assumptions or in your former findings with your projects that you had done in this area prior?
The last project that I personally worked on in this specific location was about 3 or 4 houses up from this current site on Kent Road, again on the same side of Kent Road. I know there have been some losses of the street on the downhill side of it, but I have not gone back and compared the rates of erosion in that area to what we originally projected.
And to follow on your comments right before at the conclusion of your presentation, where you were describing the road and the concrete, and there's sometimes some movement of, if I'm understanding, there could have been a roadbed added onto the bluff to create that road at some point in time, or to put that cement slab at some point in time. So am I correct in understanding that you're suggesting the bluff underneath that is sloughing at some rate, and it has a different physical composition perhaps than the roadbed and whatever was built on top of it at whatever point in time that was created? Is that accurate?
That's correct. The ocean bluff there is rock materials. That extends almost all the way up to the top of the bluff. And then when you get to the top of the bluff, there's a little bit of natural soil. And then this particular area where the concrete pavement slab moved, it also had fill that was man-placed at some point in the past to extend level ground so they could add more parking to the area.
So I'm looking at your report on, well, what was for us packet page 305, and it looks like, I don't know what page of your report, oh, page 3 of the report describing the materials. It's in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. It starts with the paragraph, the Brab, Gramer, and Jones map indicates that the site is underlain by unnamed sandstone, shale, and conglomerate. Are these the materials you're referring to when you said how the bluff is what the bluff consists of, or was there another place that I'm missing that?
This is actually the description of the bedrock directly under the site, because that's what the whole
not the
report is
bluff
about. This
itself.
was not, this graph was not specifically about the bluff.
I see. And then I have another question about the hydrology study, because the appellant stated there wasn't one and the applicant's representative stated there was. Can you please talk very brief, you have a very high level on what the hydrology study looks at, and what the purpose of doing one is, and what was the finding with this particular project at this site?
So the city requires that the amount of runoff that leaves the site during the 100-year storm is less than or equal to the amount of runoff that's leaving the site in that same storm today. So today the site is largely undeveloped, has less runoff. Once the site is developed, you'd increase that runoff unless you implement measures to hold back some of that water. And so the site has stormwater features like that to limit the flow, try to mimic it as best we can to what it would see today.
Can you describe what those would be?
Yes, there's some bioretention facilities as well as pervious pavement.
Bioretention, is that what you said the first time? You cut out a little bit?
Yep. It's like a stormwater treatment and detention facility.
Okay. And then that runoff that ultimately results after those retention strategies and those mitigations that you've put in place, the runoff that remains then joins the city's storm process for all of what we normally would see on Danman. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, in terms of that hydrology study, is there any consideration for natural springs?
If we had encountered that during the geotechnical investigation, that would have been part of the study. But the geotechnical investigation, as far down as we drilled, and Dan can remind me what that depth is, we did not encounter any groundwater or springs.
You're on mute, Dan.
Looking at our reports, we were down anywhere between 15 and 20 feet for our borings and hit no groundwater in any of the 3 holes that we drilled.
Okay, and is that directly under the site?
Correct.
Okay, so there was nothing sort of as where it meets the bluff, right?
That's not on our property, and people get very upset when I go drill on their property.
No, I know, but so I guess my concern is that the drills went directly down, as opposed to some of these natural springs they're not right there. They could pop out later. We were encountering them all over the city, which is why I'm concerned about it. So.
Right, but if to do anything about them on our lot, we'd have to encounter them on our lot to intercept them.
Understood. Okay. Anyone have any other questions for the applicant? No? Okay, so with that, I will open the public hearing.
Mike O'Neill was raising his hand.
Oh, sorry, Mike. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, I just had a question for staff. Even after the merger, from what I read in the staff report, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is still a substandard lot, correct? At 30, I have 3,500 feet. Oh, hi, Christian, you just popped up.
Out of nowhere. Good evening, Council. Senior Planner Christian Murdoch. That's correct. This lot, as merged, remains less than 5,000 square feet in area, and less than 25 feet in width. And so it did remain a substandard lot.
Typically, we have what's our floor area ratio for a standard lot, and what is our floor area ratio for a substandard lot?
So the city does not have a floor area ratio for conforming lots that meet lot size standards. The city arguably doesn't have a standard, if you will, for substandard lots either in terms of floor area ratio. What it does have is a threshold for determining whether or not discretionary permits are required, which means going to the planning commission, for example, in order to develop your non-conforming lot. If you stay below 50% floor area ratio on your non-conforming lot, in addition to a variety of other standards, you can obtain a building permit to develop a structure on the site without going through a discretionary permit process, such as a planning commission hearing. And this project complied with all of those non-conforming lot standards. And so therefore, the only discretionary permit required was the coastal development permit, not the site development permit related to development on a non-conforming lot.
So in looking at the floor area ratio, you include the house, right, which is what, 1,750 something feet, right? And then there was a 200 something foot garage and a 200 something square foot I'm talking about carport. And I kind of calculated that out as to a floor area ratio of over 60.
Sure. If you included all of those values, you probably would arrive at that figure. However, the city's zoning regulations define floor area to exclude garage area and other open areas such as the deck outside and the carport. And so when you count just the floor area as defined in the city's zoning regulations, the project complies with that 0.5 or 50% floor area ratio to stay below that threshold for development on non-conforming lots.
Okay, so that's how you got to the below 50%. Okay.
Correct.
And that's by city statute and regulations?
It is. It's the definition of floor area in the city zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Raise hand. Flagging you down. Mary?
Yeah, this is for staff. Can you explain the discrepancy between the merger of the lots and having it be two separate applications? Can you explain that?
Of course. So I think one of the key points the appellant tried to make is pointing to the actual lot merger documents themselves. It is clear to me that there is a typo, and I'll share a couple different documents to help piece it together for the council. If you bear with me just one moment. So the first document I want to share is from the staff presentation. Hopefully you can see the lot merger documents. They're of poor quality as shown here. But what's clear and that the appellant pointed to as well is lots 3 and 40, she argues, meant that this lot merger of the subject site, 277 Kent, actually merged with the other adjacent lot known as 1300 Danman, which is described as lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 41. I contend that this lots 3 is very clearly a typo, and I'll show you why I believe that to be the case. First off, if you look at the configuration of the bold line drawn by staff at the time of the lot mergers, it's very clear it orients with the subject site. There's no mistaking that this is intended to be the 277 Kent site. This merger over here, the bold lines around the adjacent site, very clearly incorporates these lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and lot 41. Hopefully I can switch over quickly here and show you why it's a typo for yet another reason. Here you'll see the assessor parcel map for this area. And it doesn't show the same boundaries as the lot mergers, but you can see lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and lot 41. The lot numbers of the original underlying Pedro Point subdivision map are these numbers here without circles. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 41 comprise the 1300 Danman site. These circled numbers are added onto the subdivision map by the assessor's office, and they correspond to the assessor's parcel number. And you can see here that staff at that time, city staff incorrectly, probably through having to work very quickly on the hundreds of mergers they were doing citywide, incorrectly indicated lot 3 and 40 for the 277 Kent merger, when in fact you can see the circled 3 belongs to the assessor's parcel number, not to the lot 7 underlying lot from the subdivision. And you can see also, to contradict what the appellant said, lot 3 is actually completely on the opposite side of these parcels, and there's no contiguous boundary, and they could not have ever qualified for merger. So I think when you piece together all of this information, it's very clear that lots 7 and 40 were merged, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 41 were merged. So that's the first part. The second part relates to staff's analysis of the historic use of the sites. Admittedly, it took some work to piece together this history to understand why all of these lots were not merged by the city staff in the 1980s. And as we worked through this issue, including finding what historic information there was available, we came across a piece of information which coincidentally was published by the Pedro Point Neighborhood Association describing this area. And so prepared by author Carl Baldwin at the time, I'm not sure that I have the date of this document readily available. But hopefully you can see here in this highlighted paragraph talking about a history of some Pedro Point structures, there's some description of this area of the neighborhood. And it talks about the Pedro Point Firehouse and a building known as Danman's Hayloft, which we believe was on the east side of Danman Avenue in this vicinity. And in this highlighted paragraph, the author goes on to describe across Danman Avenue from the Hayloft site was another hotel / boarding house that burned down many years before fire swept through the Hayloft. It too was used by workmen building the railroad. So we use this information to support a determination that there was in fact a commercial use, and therefore that supported our other determinations related to the nature of any potential accessory buildings. It's our contention that they're not accessory to any prior residential use, but in fact were part of the commercial buildings on the site. And so that I think is the summary of the information that we as staff evaluated to support the findings that we laid out in the staff report about how we believe the city staff correctly determined the lot mergers, and that there's not a basis today to go ahead and merge all of the lots as suggested by the appellant.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Mike, do you have any other questions for Christian? Mike O'Neill? Okay. Okay, so if no other questions, I'm going to open the public hearing and receive public testimony. So now would be the time to raise your hand. And I see one hand raised. If anyone else in the meeting would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. I will hand it over to Elizabeth Brooks.
We'll hear now from Cherie Chan.
Hey there, Elizabeth. Could you also share my screen, please?
No, the public testimony is audio only, please.
So you can't see my face either then?
No, it's just audio testimony for public comments.
Okay. All right. I was going to pull up, I think I've shared with some of you some drone footage of the enormous coastal erosion which is occurring. Hi, my name is Cherie Chan. I live on 324 San Pedro Avenue, and I live down the street, and we walk by the old llama farm all the time. My kids loved feeding the llamas until their sad demise. I'm here to support my neighbor, Allison West, in her appeal for this non-conforming lot steps away from a vulnerable eroding cliff. The planning department's insistence that Ms. West's appeal be denied is disappointing, and I think it's just going to create more problems for the city in the future. Speaking to the planning department's CEQA analysis, I looked up what the city of Pacifica planning department is doing as opposed to the city of San Francisco as it interprets CEQA. And most importantly, you are looking at Rule 15303 without looking at the overarching framework for that exemption, which is project be determined to not have a significant effect on the environment and must be consistent with both the letter and the intent expressed in such cases. It's a really unique interpretation of a CEQA exemption, and in terms of like whether there is an environmental impact, there is a reason why the Coastal Commission has created 3 separate comments speaking, and 3 separate letters to this specific parcel due to their concern. The other thing I wanted to point out is in terms of the 100-year design life consideration, again, the Coastal Commission was very clear that the historical retreat rate for this parcel, and they were commenting on this parcel, not on Pacifica in general, is again.
Cherie, you're cutting out.
A magnitude.
Can you repeat that, Cherie?
I said the difference between what the Coastal Commission is citing for this property specifically, as opposed to what geoforensics cites, is an order of magnitude difference. It is 10 times greater what the Coastal Commission is saying versus what geoforensics is saying. I'm a rock climber, and there is no way I would climb on sandstone, and this is called competent bedrock material. I mean, as somebody who lives there, I know that that property is constantly falling into the ocean. As we've seen from the recent Beach Boulevard project, there's no way this is going to be approved by the Coastal Commission. This is an unreasonable project. In a best case scenario there, maybe after years of litigation, we can move from 7 to 3 units. I don't know. That's certainly not our starting point or our position. Okay, I'm out of time.
Thanks, Cherie. Does anyone else on the line have anything else they want to add? Raise your hand.
Yeah. Hi, Deidre. This is Sam Casillas. You actually have me, I think, as a rebuttal witness, but so
no, hang on, Sam. Are you Are you going to have a comment right now, or are you?
Yeah, I'm going to have a comment first, and then I can rebut.
Okay, so can you raise your hand?
It doesn't allow me because whoever is controlling.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, is he part of the appellant's team? Because if he is, then he needs to speak as in the rebuttal time for the appellant.
Okay, so it sounds like he's part of the appellant's rebuttal team. So he's not allowed to make a comment during.
No, he's not allowed.
When was that stated? I'm sorry, attorney. I don't know when that. Where'd you pull that out?
Well, you, as a member of the public, you have 3 minutes. If you would like to include in that 3 minutes the time that you are speaking on behalf of the appellant, you can do that. But you will only receive 3 minutes. So you will not have 3 minutes plus a rebuttal for the appellant.
So I have my 3 minutes, and then we have 3 minutes for the rebuttal, do we not?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So my understanding is I can have 3 minutes as a public person right now.
Unless the appellant does not wish to take her rebuttal, and I was not aware of that. I understood that she did want a rebuttal.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't understand.
So here's the deal, Sam. You can talk for 3 minutes right now, and that's the rebuttal. It's not, you don't get to do both. You only get to do one or the other. So which do you want to do?
But if I yield my time to him.
If you yield your time to him, then he still gets 3 minutes right now.
If you yield my time to me, Allison, then I still only get the 3 minutes for the rebuttal. That's what I'm saying. It's only 3 minutes, so I can speak. You can rebuttal, or I can rebuttal, but then I don't get the 3 minutes for my public comments. Is that correct?
Right. That's
correct. So my recommendation would be, Sam, take your 3 minutes right now, and Allison, keep your 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay.
Is that your choice?
Sure.
Okay. So Elizabeth, can we give Sam 3 minutes right now?
Hi, City Council. Please be advised that the staff has erroneously recommended to deny the appeal of proposed development at 227 the city did ignore its own municipal code to merge substandard lots with the adjacent lot at 1300 Danman, owned by the same entity, meaning this application was filed in error. It is unclear if these lots weren't already merged. Just because Christian, who I respect, is saying, well, there was an error, it just fits into the narrative here. It says that those lots were merged, and it also gave a different map. So you can't just pull out a different map now and say, oh, wait, we have another map, and this map is over here. Well, when those lots merged, they decided to take lot 3 and put that into the big lot, and then they decided to merge lot 3 with the smaller lot. So we're looking at it, and it's merged. So I don't know how they can come to this conclusion. The other thing is the coastal erosion associated with climate change. The most serious concern is that it sits right on top of a coastal erosion area that is prone to landslides. And USGA data is the standard to use, and coastal has stated to use at 2.3 feet. Google Earth is not a viable data source. That's like using Wikipedia for your sources. So you can't do that. If you want to, if you want to talk about what's going on there today, I don't believe the geologists actually went out there. There is 10 feet, as you saw in the presentation, ready to fall off today, based on the storms that just happened. And over the past 5 years, another 10 feet fell off. So you got 20 feet falling off in like 10 years. So how can you not use the higher measure that actually the Coastal Commission is recommending, and they are the permitting agency? On top of that, saying that it is exempt from CEQA, you tell me how a building falling into the ocean is not a potential environmental hazard. And then that brings us to design life. The design life is supposed to be 100 years. You saw your own maps, you saw the USGS maps, that's telling you that this is only going to last for a few decades. That erosion within 80 years is going to be 230 feet. So how are we going less than what is required for a 100-year design life? Furthermore, the city should heed the Coastal Commission's denial of the project of 1567 Beach Boulevard. The Coastal Commission stated that developments where coastal hazards are not adequately addressed are inconsistent with its own hazard policies, and coastal staff admonished the city for not utilizing higher rates of erosion due to sea level rise getting more dire every day due to climate change. The city's current approach to not heed the Coastal Commission's advice, conditions, and recommendations will create serious repercussions for the city. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam. So I see someone named Sean Pinello with a hand raised in the panelist view. Does anyone know who that is, Elizabeth? And does Sean get?
Mayor, Sean Pinello was advised to be one of the applicant's team members.
Okay. He has his hand raised, so I don't, okay, we just lowered it, so. All right, I don't see any other, okay, I do see a hand raised now for another public comment.
We'll hear now from Jean Calais.
Hi. Yeah, I'm actually one of the granddaughters of the original owner. My mother is one of the owners of the property. And just to clarify for the people who keep saying that the top residential lot and the bottom lots were merged, no, we are trying to sell them as one. And then it has always been residential for the 25-foot lot, and it has always been commercial for the bottom lots. We as a family don't go up there very often anymore, only because the house is falling apart. Most of us don't live in the area anymore. I'm one of the ones that does, but vacationing now, I go to see my son who moved out of state because he can't afford to live in California. So we're just trying to make the property so that somebody else can enjoy what we enjoyed growing up. I've been going there since I was a baby. My grandmother actually had property on the beach at one point that was sold back to the state for where the bathrooms are in Pacifica. So it's not that we don't. And the 63 years that I've been alive, the property that is there hasn't really ever changed. The ground hasn't fallen over, fallen down. And I just wanted to we just want to make it so that it's not just an empty lot. And the llamas were only there to keep our weeds down because we do know the Kibblewades. We've known them since we were young. My grandmother knew their family. Our families knew their family. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Okay, any other public comments? Okay, so then we have the applicant and the appellant get up to 3 minutes for rebuttal. Does one go before the other, Sarah?
The appellant would go first.
Okay.
And the applicant.
Okay, so Allison, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I want to just quickly highlight is that, when the PowerPoint presentation was on, I was not able to see the clock, and that seems a little unfair. So you may want to fix that in the future. The other part is, when I look at the Pacifica Municipal Code, it talks about 2 or more contiguous parcels held by the same owner. It doesn't say anything about different zoning making the merger not applicable. So even with, if just assuming arguendo only, if the lots didn't get merged, it seems that according to the Pacifica Municipal Code, they need to be merged pursuant to the actual statute here. The other part is, and I know Christian means no harm, but I find it absolutely shocking that he is producing another document different than what he produced to me. It seems just, I can't even think of the words. Like, I don't understand why he wouldn't have sent me that documentation when he sent me the very fuzzy documentation that said, he's like, these are merged, right? This is what he said. So I'm just concerned about how we get treated in Pedro Point. I have been fighting for almost 10 months to get documents. And I know we've had COVID, but I've been trying to get documents per public records request. There just seems to be like a nonstop sort of blitz against us in trying to get the information that we're entitled to. Christian has been very helpful with things, but why wouldn't he have provided me this document? So the only thing I'm gonna say in closing is we will be taking this to the Coastal Commission. We already know what they're probably gonna say because what they did with Beach Boulevard. Why are you fighting so hard to have another situation like you have in Northern Pacifica, which are houses falling into the ocean, knowing in advance how close that edge of the bluff is? And, we just really don't understand why you're putting profits over the stability of, of our city and the financial stability as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, so the applicant gets 3 minutes.
Okay, I just want to reiterate some things about the Bluff Retreat because we did, I think unlike the Beach Boulevard project that's getting referenced, we have been coordinating with Coastal Commission staff along the way. We have discussed the Bluff Retreats with them and the difference between the USGS maps and the site-specific analysis. There were some conditions that the Coastal Commission was interested in, but they were not tenable to the city. And so, we would expect that we would start discussing those conditions with the commission once this gets appealed. There was a comment about not being able to use Google Earth for to measure Bluff Retreat. That that is how it's done now in absence of the historical imagery, right? As Dan said, Google Earth has kind of put those guys out of business, so that's what we use in addition to his site visits and his expertise. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing and return to council for deliberations. With a wave of the hand, you can, Mike?
For Michelle, I know, in the past for various things working in banks and stuff, I did notice that when there has been typos, there is some sort of remediation to fix it. Has the city, is something going to be filed to remediate this discrepancy or something with the lot lines?
I'm not sure that there is a discrepancy. I would turn to Christian or Tina to answer that question.
Thank you, Michelle. I think it's plain to me that there is a typo on the description. I think the graphical exhibit is clear. I think when you piece together the lot merger for the subject site, 277 Kent, and the 1300 Damon site, in particular where lot 3 is located, I think it's apparent that they're not contiguous properties that were intended to be merged. So, there is a typo. What effect it has, I'm not sure. I'm not aware right now what process the city would follow rather to correct that typo by recording a new.
And I don't view that typographical error as a substantive error that would impact the legality of anything that the council is considering tonight.
Okay. Now, in regards to, I know from when I was on the planning commission and I was on there just like within 10 years of when all these lot mergers happened, one of the requirements was that it was what word you use, contiguous properties that were all in the same vesting. Were those two lots also, do you know, or where were they in the same title and vesting as the others?
So the information that I reviewed indicates that the same owners own both properties. So I believe title was vested in the same entity, which I believe was a trust.
Okay,
however, there's a number of other criteria which must be met for merger. And so staff at that time did not conclude that they met the criteria for merger. And we were left to do an exercise today in 2020 to understand how they reached that conclusion. And I believe we've gathered sufficient evidence to understand why they reached the conclusion that they should not be merged in their entirety.
And so, but then once this development is done, no more development would be allowed on that site, correct?
So the subject site, 277 Kent, the subject of this appeal this evening, the lot, given its zoning, would only be allowed to construct one primary single-family residence, and then under the city's accessory dwelling unit ordinance, potentially an accessory dwelling unit and maybe a junior accessory dwelling unit.
Now, in regards to the arguments for the coastal commission, between the ocean and this lot is the Tobin Station from the Ocean Shore Railroad, as well as quite a few houses and buildings down on the beach virtually, right, where the boat docks are and stuff. Now, my understanding is when it was pre-1977, when the Coastal Commission was formed, those properties get some sort of special exemption for building. And if the new development happens to be behind something that was built pre-1977, can you clarify for me if I'm accurate or am I inaccurate?
Sure. I think what you're referring to, Councilmember O'Neill, is the distinction between pre-Coastal Act development and post-Coastal Act development.
Right.
The Coastal Act. And there is clear language in the Coastal Act to support protection of pre-Coastal Act development. with coastal armoring under certain circumstances. It's considered existing development for purposes of shoreline protection, and there's a much clearer path forward to protection than there is for post-Coastal Act development, which in most cases is not eligible for protection. A pre-Coastal Act development that constructs coastal armoring could have the indirect benefit of protecting post-Coastal Act development, such as the subject site if it was to be approved and constructed. So for instance, if armoring was constructed in a way to protect Tobin Station, it could have the indirect benefit of protecting this and other post-Coastal Act development constructed in the vicinity.
Now, could the city be put into the position we are up at Esplanade with protecting the public infrastructure for, you know, up there after the apartment buildings fell down, we have to do something to help protect the public infrastructure on Esplanade. Is this something that we could see there? Because we would also be protecting the Pedro Point Firehouse, theoretically could go, the houses further up Kent Road could go. Would we be under any sort of obligation to protect those?
Well, I think what distinguishes this site from the sites on Esplanade is that the city staff is not aware of any public infrastructure or public rights of way between the subject site and the ocean. So I don't know that we're in the same situation of seeking to protect public infrastructure and streets.
So I would assume there's some, at least public infrastructure up to the firehouse in Tobin Station, I would assume. We're not sure about that.
So the Pedro Point Firehouse is located inland of this project site. There may be a utility or utilities going down Danman Avenue directly to Tobin Station, but I'm not aware of any utilities or public rights of way running parallel to Kent Road or parallel to Shelter Cove Road that would make a clear case for the city going to construct a seawall to protect public infrastructure. But perhaps other city staff have additional knowledge of infrastructure in that area that I'm not aware of.
And through the mayor, just to clarify that Shelter Cove Road is not a public road, and at Planning Commission, if I remember correctly, Mr. Bautista clarified that there was no known public utilities under that road as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members have any questions? Comments?
Maybe we can,
go ahead, Mary.
maybe we can just hear from Commissioner Big Stick if there's anything you wanted to add. I know there was a long conversation at planning and you asked a lot of questions there. So if you wanted to add anything, that would be great.
Happy to answer any specific questions you have, but in general, I don't feel a need to. I don't have anything that I feel to add extra at this time, but if you want to ask me something about the meeting, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, no, thank you.
I don't know who can answer this, but what was the discussion around indemnification of the city?
Sure. So there was a letter from the Coastal Commission in which there were 3 recommendations, and the language they used had something to do, I think it was the 3rd point, had something to do with specifically calling out indemnifying the city. And the way the conversation wound up going, it was recommended, since we don't have that language for other developments, it would actually put us more at risk if we put that language in for this development, because it would be different from the way the city normally is conducting itself. So that's the way that conversation went in that moment.
Okay, Christian, did you have anything to add to that, or were you good with that?
I think that's generally correct, that the assistant city attorney that was helping us at the hearing, she opined that, in fact, treating this property differently as a one-off would be riskier from her perspective than, imposing the, not imposing the commission, rather.
So that's sort of what's concerning me here, is that we're not treating these, I feel like Planning Commission is not treating these like a one-off. And it sort of feels like a one size fits all on the coastline development. At least the last two that have come before us, this being the second one, I suspect there will be more. And the last Beach Boulevard offered us some money sort of as a peace offering in exchange for indemnification, which they wouldn't give or we wouldn't tolerate. So that's one of my concerns. Mike, did you have something on that along that lines?
Well, no, I remember asking the question of somebody, I forget, because when the residential building guidelines came out from the Coastal Commission about 3 years ago, one of the things they stated was that they wanted new construction builders or people that did additions to their houses to post a bond to indemnify the city against these, the additional construction and stuff. But the problem is there is no financial instrument to do that. You can't go take, insurance out that your house might flood or wash away or whatever, and no one really wants to post $200,000-$400,000 in a bond account that who knows if it's not even, for something that might happen in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So to put that requirement on any piece of property is almost a taking of the property, because there is no instrument for them to provide and do that, meet that requirement.
Well, I actually think that there is a bigger issue with requiring indemnification on this particular project. And I think it goes to the fact that staff and the Planning Commission concluded by approving this permit and the staff recommending approval that there are no concerns with erosion. There are no concerns with injury to the city by virtue of approving this permit. So there's no nexus between that type of a condition and the burden that this project is imposing.
Okay.
That's the bigger concern from my perspective, with the indemnification clause.
Okay. So that's my one concern is the indemnification. Because I feel like it would sort of almost be a no-brainer if there was no issue or concern. I'm concerned with our development on the coast as it is. I follow this pretty closely. We've all been very involved with the local coastal plan and all of the concerns around retreat or managed retreat. I myself lived in a building that was red tagged, and I lived there for years. And I firsthand know that an inch of erosion one year could mean 5 feet the next year. And that's unfortunate. If you've gone out and walked this property, I think you might feel differently. If you were, to me, it is very similar to putting a house across from the Chit Chat Cafe up at Esplanade. I know there is a different makeup of the earth there, but when you're that close to the cliff's edge, you are really putting everyone at risk there. And my perspective is protection of the taxpayers here, because all those folks also north of Beach Boulevard, which blows my mind beyond belief that it passed planning and passed this council in the splash zone, nonetheless, that thank goodness the Coastal Commission is thinking level-headed. And that's sort of how I feel. So the folks that are north of there are all on the hook for protecting themselves, when ultimately it's going to come down on us most likely. I'm sort of the hydrology piece. We've all been privy to these natural springs that have caused us so much heartache, and we're spending money on it. I don't know if there's a better way to get a read on natural springs. But when I was out there, I saw what is most definitely a natural spring when the water season comes. And we all know that that's a hazard, especially as a walkway in front of that bluff there. It's a very active bluff. You can see stuff that has most recently fallen. I'm just, it's, you know, it's blowing my mind that this is a consideration. I'm respectful of property owners, and Jean, I appreciate that you want to make it nice for future families. I don't have any more what I feel are logical explanations. I don't think there are any logical explanations to be building here. So, Mary, did you have anything?
I just was gonna talk about maximizing the setback and if that's gonna make a difference or not. And doesn't, like, Tina, would that make a difference to maximize the setback?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that, but anecdotally, I think that if you do increase the setback and there is erosion in the future, it just makes sense that that is some help in the future.
Well, that's what I would suggest, and I'd be for the project if they maximize the setback.
Sue?
I'll make a motion that we uphold the Planning Commission's decision and deny the appeal, allowing for additional setbacks. And I don't have the wording in front of me. I'm sorry, I am sitting in the dark. So if I could have the help from City Attorney for the wording on the motion.
Are you planning on changing any of the staff recommendation, or are you just, do you just want to approve what staff has recommended?
Plus the moving the house forward towards the garage, so to maximize the setback.
I think we're going to need Tina or Christian to weigh in on that, on how to achieve that in terms of, is it another condition?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So I would suggest adding an additional condition of approval. Perhaps Tina can offer this precise wording she would feel most comfortable with, but something allowing the planning director discretion to determine the maximum extent practicable to move the house forward while complying with all other applicable codes, including any separation between building requirements, for instance.
That sounded perfect.
And I'd just like to clarify that it is maximizing the rear setback specifically.
The rear setback.
Yes.
So I would suggest, Councilmember Vaterlos, that you move to adopt, to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's approval of Coastal Development Permit CDP 413-19 by adopting the resolution as amended by Senior Planner Christian Murdoch and included as attachment A.
And I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right. Can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
No.
And that motion passes with a vote of 4 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay. With that, we will move on to items for consideration. City Council agenda planning for fiscal year 2020-2021 first quarter.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. and council members, Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. This item before you is really a discussion about the summer planning months and our tentative agenda. As the council's aware, when COVID-19 hit and council meetings moved to 100% virtual, the council's preference was to put hot topic items, so to speak, on hold. And at that time, we didn't know how long we'd be continuing meeting in the virtual environment. And as we know now, it's been continuing for a while and is expected to continue for a while. Yet there are numerous topics addressed in the staff report that are becoming time critical and essential to be making progress on them. So I've put together a recommended tentative agenda planning timeframe of major initiatives for July, August, and September for the council's consideration. And the recommended action here is to confirm priority essential business items to be agendized for council and commission review. Some of these items do involve commissions as well. During July, August, and September 2020, while continuing virtual meetings during the coronavirus pandemic. So the items, and I won't go through all of the detail for each of these from the staff report, but they include the unhoused in Pacifica permit parking program that has numerous comments have been received about. The Sharp Park specific plan, continuing the work on that. Another hot topic that has really come up during the pandemic and shelter in place is continued illegal dumping and public garbage can issues. And that is related to the council priority related to addressing litter issues in town. The Beach Boulevard seawall design, as the council knows, the council approved that contract and for that project to begin. The commission and committee recruitments process. Before coronavirus, we had several recruitments that were, interviews were conducted in person, but then the shutdown happened and those decisions were made at that time. And now, months later, there's numerous other expected vacancies coming up. So conducting those interviews in the virtual environment. The Vision 2025 project has been delayed, and that's continues to be on the major priority list for this next fiscal year. So continuing or picking up again, I should say, work on that. There's the Beach Boulevard Park and Plaza project, which has been delayed and is ready to go back to the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission and then City Council. And then there was a referral approved on the consent to PB&R for the surf camps policy as well, which would involve PB&R meetings in the virtual environment. That's a summary of the different items identified that were, staff work requires, especially on these important topics, advance notice. So that's why we're bringing this to you now for this discussion about, do we want to continue or pick up again work on these items while continuing meetings in the virtual environment? Of course, the alternative is to continue to delay many of these items until an uncertain point in the future when we're having city council meetings in person again, or some combination. Some projects move forward and some delayed. And so I'm seeking council direction on confirming this so we can plan the agenda for the next few months. I'm available for any questions.
Can I ask the first question? Are we having our meeting the last week of July, the second meeting in July?
So, and there's a comment about that in the staff report. The tentative agenda planner as presented to you is not requiring the end of July meeting. And, you know, there's a couple of variables. I guess I would like to point out that a hot topic like the unhoused permit parking program, I'm recommending that that occurs at a special meeting in the second week of July, because the July 13th regular city council meeting has 2 appeal items on it. And as we just witnessed, appeal items can be time consuming, and there's 2 on that agenda. So that meeting would be a little unwieldy to have that issue appear at a regular meeting. If the council weren't interested in a special meeting the second week of July, I'd recommend we get to that issue sooner than later, or if other items were juggled around, the council could consider holding the July 27th meeting and using that for agenda planning as well. But the timelines tentatively recommended here doesn't require that meeting to occur.
Okay.
And if the council were to approve or endorse not holding that meeting at the July 13th meeting, we'd bring the actual action to cancel the second meeting in July, second regular meeting in July.
Okay, I was just checking in terms of the scope of things. Mike?
Is there any thought or estimate as to when we get the policing issues in Pacifica on a meeting? Is that like the next 3 months, 4 months?
I mentioned earlier in my comments that we'll do that debriefing and bring together sort of a draft work plan to bring back to the council. I anticipate, and Chief Steidel and I are meeting this week, so I'll know more, but I think we together anticipate, and he's probably online, he can chime in if he'd like, but that if we're not ready to bring a draft work plan of items on July 13th, then definitely by the first meeting in August. So we would like to bring that to the council sooner than later. So not 2 or 3 months out, but at the latest by early August.
My thought, are we going to get public input on this that we should deliberate now, or is it just comments?
If you want to ask questions before we do have one hand raised.
Okay. No, I'm fine then. I'll wait.
Council want to go to public comment first?
I just have a question about the Sharp Park specific plan project. I'm looking at the staff report and trying to gauge timing on that. It says item 3 under that item says the city council meeting is projected to be late September or October for approval of land use framework of the specific plan. That would have already been heard by Planning Commission, is that correct?
Yeah, the first step, and then Director Weremeister chime in, I'll just summarize. I mean, the first step is for it to go back to the Planning Commission, and then there to be an additional community meeting, which would be designed and occur in this kind of virtual environment. And then it goes to City Council, and if Director Weremeister wants to add more.
But I'm specifically wondering about the approval of land use framework. Is that part of when it's going to the Planning Commission in item 1, number 1 on that list? Is that including the land use piece? Director Weremeister.
I wanted to make sure I understood. So you're asking, will the Planning Commission have provided input on the land use framework?
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then how long does it take to develop the land use framework after council has met and deliberated on it and had a presentation from you? Do you project?
I would project that we, so maybe what you're getting at is when will we be done with that process? I'm thinking that it'll probably be by the end of the year, early next year.
Okay. I think that's my only question right now. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to public comment. We've got one hand.
Here now from Tiger Jazz Big Stick.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I am Tiger Jazz Pros Big Stick of Pacifica. It feels like it's been in a short span of time, a long journey coming from a place where the public was only allowed to send in emails to finally our voices can be heard in real time, as I am grateful to be able to do right now. For some of these bigger topics, such as the Sharp Park specific plan, and again, I'm very grateful that we are able to give our voices in real time. I've heard at, I think, several meetings now while we're being able to give voice feedback that public still kind of craves eye-to-eye contact. And of course, there's still some members of the community who are not intuitive when it comes to technology in general. So I just wanted to kind of caution that the more we're able to get public feedback, the better we are as a community. And if we're not able 100% to address those who are not technologically savvy, if any effort can be made for people to be able to show their voice while they're giving feedback, I think a lot of folks would appreciate that. A portion of giving feedback has something to do with the interaction, and you know, it's very different seeing a group of faces and interacting with that group on some level. And even though there's no back and forth in terms of responding to a person in real time, there's a lot of nonverbal cues that a person is able to give you or that they're looking for from you. And it's a very different experience doing it this way. So again, we've come 110% in a great direction since we began, and it's a blessing that we're even able to give voice feedback in real time. If at some point between now and whenever these items do come up, you're able to see our faces, I think it'll help the community that much more to feel like they're being heard. And I think that it'll probably help you to hear us in a way that maybe you're not always able to hear us in this moment. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tiger. We have another hand raised. This is on agenda. I just want to make sure that this is on agenda item related to our planning for this year. Sunil Bhatt.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Based on Mr. Woodhouse's comment, I just want to make it clear. I know that I am scheduled for an appeal hearing on July 13th. And the WCFs were not one of the major issues that Mr. Woodhouse just presented. I would be happy to push that meeting back. I know you have a tolling agreement with Verizon into September. So if it would help you guys at all, I'm happy to push our hearing back, especially if you can combine this with the appeal for the Redwood WCF that we will be filing this week, and maybe you can hear them together at a later date. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil.
If I may, Mayor Martin, the commenter brings up a good issue. This list of issues here is not intended to be all of the essential business and timeline regulatory driven essential business items on the council's agenda. This is just focused on those types of items that were sort of put on hold. So I wanted to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members have a question or comment?
I have a comment about Mr. Big Stick's comment about the technology limitations, or what I heard him saying, potential possibilities as we move forward. I was one of those who was advocating for as much public comment as we can have. And I agree that having voice comment is very beneficial and can be accomplished through a telephone call. Most people have touch tone, so that, you know, allows for that, even if you don't understand how to do the computer or don't have a computer. I'm wondering if there's any response from the city clerk or the city manager about the possibility of having comments including video, not just audio. And it seems as though, maybe I'm misremembering this, but it seems I keep modeling my mind of what we might be able to do after what the Board of Supervisors is doing. I realize their technology is in a different state than ours, and their staffing is as well. However, I believe they have both voice and items being read into the record. And it seems like when we got voice, we took out items read into the record and instead posting them on the city's website and making them available to council. There's a great deal of redundancy, but not 100% overlap in what I receive in my email inbox anyway, and then what is reflected in the comments that are posted by City Clerk Coffee. But I'm wondering if, I know it makes the meetings longer, but you know, that's sort of something we have to contend with. And I think the fix on that is the only thing we can control in that regard is public comment, the length of time of the public comment per individual, depending on how many want to comment, and the agendas. How packed are the agendas? I mean, what type of agenda item goes with what? But what I'm trying to figure out is are there any other options to broaden the possibilities for public comment at this juncture?
So there were, yeah, a couple comments in there. So let me try to summarize. One was that when we switched from just the live time email comment process to the live time voice comment process, and then stopped live time email because you can submit emails before 4 p.m. on the day of the agenda and have those shared with the city council. That's analogous to how our regular non-coronavirus time city council meetings occur. In other words, during a regular city council meeting, we don't read emails into the record. And so there was that substitution made, and the council does receive both emails as well as then the verbal comments. In terms of the comment or the thought about having video comments, as we all are navigating this brave new world of Zoom virtual meetings, a lot of the best practices suggest that you don't do video public comment for a few reasons. One is that there's a much higher risk of Zoom bombing, and you can't control that. Technologically and administratively, it's much more difficult to manage in the Zoom webinar format. You have to upgrade people to the video component. So there's some technical challenges that require a lot more staff time to do that. And then thirdly, maybe the most important thing is that not everyone has video access. So there's the equity of someone verbally being able to use their voice by calling in from a landline or a cell phone on Zoom, whereas other people might have the technology and be able to video in. So there was an equity issue that's part of that formula as well. So I'm not recommending that we move to, for city council meetings or commission or committee meetings, of video and voice format. Now there could be, I'll say that some of these important meetings are more community-based and there's sort of staff-led community meetings that aren't city council meetings. And there might be the ability to hold more of a free-flowing video-based meeting there, but you would still have the equity issues of people being able to phone in. So we have to figure that out, but.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mike?
I just wanted to bring up that the COVID thing kind of happened in the middle of some of these things. And we did have, I know I went to at least one meeting in the Little Brown Church where it was packed. We also had postcards sent out, and we had a website where people put in input. So we have had some public input already. I'm not saying that's enough. I'm just saying that the process has started. So I am for the, keeping the way we are now, but also moving forward. But if, all of a sudden, Newsom says it's okay, open up, I would certainly be open to public meetings then. I mean, but I do think we need to move forward with some of this stuff just because we can't just be stagnant.
Yeah.
Sue Vagerlas?
I appreciate the comment from the appellant on the towers, and that could change our direction of our meetings. We definitely need to go on with these major items. And even some like the dumping and the garbage, which I hear about all the time. No garbage cans on the beach, and the dumping. Mainly what I hear about is dumping from vehicles by the side of the road and the problems there. The Sharp Park specific plan is huge. I know we have to hear appeals in a timely manner. And the seawall, these are such big issues. We need to continue and look at all these issues because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah, I absolutely think we need to continue. And then bouncing off of what Mike said about the possibility of maybe sometime going back to public meetings, it might come down to that we're going to have to do both, like have the public meeting and also on Zoom, because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to want to come out in public. So we're going to have to think about what that's going to look like as we move forward. But I think for now we have to get going.
If I could comment on that, because it's also a good point. As of now, and I'm not saying that maybe technology won't change. Right now, PCTV has told us that they can't broadcast a hybrid meeting, so partially virtual and partially in person. That's a technology challenge we have in video broadcasting the meetings.
So, Kevin, this plan is through September?
Correct. That's the tentative horizon. Unsure whether some of the items, like when the Sharp Park specific plan would be coming to the council, is that going to be September or October? But generally, I'm really focused on the first quarter of the new fiscal year.
Okay.
And again, I do want to emphasize that there are other smaller items that work has already been done on, or that are other essential business and, the normal contract reviews, or the, cell tower appeals, et cetera, that those will also be agendized. But this is that kind of unique list of hot topic items that were interrupted or are now new by the coronavirus.
So there were already some things that were underway that will come back to us anyway because they're half done or.
Yes, like for example, we addressed the beekeeping issue and we need to bring a nuisance ordinance back to the council. We're already working on that and would anticipate doing that this summer.
Okay. Did we already had public comment on this. Is this a item for, this is item for consideration. So do you have to take a vote on this?
We don't need a formal motion, but we should just get consensus from the council that their approval of the staff report.
Okay. I think, do we have consensus here with the shake of heads? Yes, thumbs up.
I have a question about the combining of, and defer to staff on this, the benefit, if there is one, of combining the two 5G related appeal. Would that change the timeline at all in pushing that back? Is that a consideration for us? That would help, as the appellant so graciously offered.
I will defer to Director Waremeister and the city attorney in part, but even though the subject matter of those appeals is similar, they're different projects in different locations.
I can speak to the timeline. So the municipal code states that appeals should be held within 60 days of the appeal date. And so if we were to go beyond that for either of the two Verizon wireless sites, we would need both the appellant, which I believe Dr. Bott said he would be willing to go farther out, but we would also need Verizon to also consent to that. And I don't know if by way of having a tolling agreement, they've already in effect done that or not, or if they would need to separately state that they would be okay with extending that Pacifica Municipal Code requirement of the hearing date for the appeal.
Well, and I would just also add to that, even though they may be related to a certain extent, they are different applications and they are different projects. And so they don't lend themselves to easily being combined. There would be two separate staff reports, separate findings, separate, facts and evidence. So they are two separate projects.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to find some time.
Okay, so with that, we have consensus then. I think you have direction, Kevin. And can we take a 5-minute bio break? Great. Okay, it is 9:58. Come back at 10:02.
Mayor Martin, council members, Kevin Woodhouse, city manager. I'm going to make very brief introductory comments and then hand it over to Assistant City Manager Hines to step quickly through the proposed budget. I'm pleased to present the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 that is balanced, transparent, accountable, and prudent, and yet it still supports forward progress on critical programs and services for the Pacifica community, despite the current economic climate due to coronavirus impacts and the outset of a recession. So before I make another comment about that, I want to thank the council members for their attention to this budget over the course of numerous meetings, as well as patience and understanding while we're doing our budget development process during the coronavirus impacted months. It's been a challenging time to try to make revenue projections. And so thank you to the council for your diligent attention to all of that. And particularly, I want to take the opportunity to thank Assistant City Manager Hines and the finance team for all the work they've put into this budget, as well as all of the department directors and their staff that have worked on this budget. So pleased to bring this forward. The progress the city has made and will continue to make on all of the city council goals and priorities is noteworthy, especially when viewed within the financial, staffing, and current pandemic constraints under which the city is operating. The fiscal year 2021 proposed budget reflects the city's resiliency in the face of these challenges. Over the past several months, in responding to the coronavirus challenges, the city has shown how it is #Pacifica Strong, and we will carry this mantra forward into 2021. So again, I'm pleased to be presenting this budget for council's consideration and adoption, and I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager Hines for details.
Mayor Martin, Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer, and the members of the Pacifica City Council, I'm Lorenzo Hines, your Assistant City Manager, and I'm here to present the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for the city of Pacifica. We are at the end of a long road, my friends, but we're not quite there yet. And so what this budget represents is a balance, as City Manager Woodhouse said, that this represents a balanced budget as of this time. And because of this pandemic and the impact that it's had on our revenues and various other parts of our lives, that we will be revisiting this budget earlier than normal. And we'll be revisiting it sometime in November and December, and we'll move the mid-year process back a couple of months because we want to make sure that this budget remains balanced. But for right now, the document before you is balanced, and as City Manager Woodhouse mentioned, it is transparent and carries forth our programs and also our council goals. And so I will move on with the item, and that we are recommending the following actions: that we move to adopt the 2020-21 appropriation of $600,000 from the Roy Davies Trust Fund. And as we mentioned in the earlier presentations, we need a 4/5 vote to appropriate any dollars from that fund. And secondly, to move to adopt a resolution adopting the 2020-2021 annual operating and capital budget presented to the council tonight with a general fund appropriation of $37 million, and in all funds, the remainder of the funds have $36 million. And so the total appropriation for this year's budget is $73 million, and that includes all of the funds, including the general fund. We've had meetings regarding the budget on April 27th, May 11th, May 26th, and most recently, June 8th, where all interested parties were heard and council provided direction to staff regarding the budget. Each year, the City of Pacifica adopts an annual operating budget which reflects the planned activities for the next fiscal year based on the best information available to the City Council and staff at the time of adoption. The budget development process, as I mentioned earlier, began in April, and staff has worked with the City Council over the past several months to fully develop the budget before you. The item that's attached to your council packet is the actual budget book. And so the budget book contains the city manager's budget message. It will contain the budget highlights, and typically I'll add the budget highlights. So that's the couple of very colorful pages that I add after adoption. And I always like to wait till after adoption in case anything gets changed. And then after budget highlights, we have the FY or fiscal year 2021 council goals and priorities. Then we have a discussion of the general fund budget summary. We then move to within that general fund budget summary, we have one-page department budget summaries. And then we have the all funds budget summary, which contains all of the funds from the general fund all the way down to our self-insurance funds, all on one page. We also have the all funds budget description, and there's also some information on the pension obligation, loans, and payback arrangement between the general fund and the enterprise funds. And so given that information, I'm going to step back and ask the council if they have any questions. Otherwise, I believe the document is ready for deliberation and a final decision.
All right, are there any questions or comments from council? I've got 2 head shakes. I've got 4 head shakes. All right, Lorenzo, looks like you did your due diligence and there are no questions this evening.
Very good, very good. Thank you all for the support during this process. You're looking at a weary ACM right now. And so I'm very happy that I'll be very happy when we're all voted out on this.
So I think we do have to acknowledge this, move to adopt. So there has to be no, wait, sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. Yeah, we need proposed action.
Do we need public comment?
Public comment.
Yeah, that first too, thanks. Anyone have any public comments? I don't see any hands raised. Now would be the time. No, I see people disappearing. Okay, I will close public comments. Come back to council.
So Lorenzo, you need 2 motions, right? One specifically for the Roy Davis's trust,
Yes.
and one to pass the budget.
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve the transfer of funds from the Roy Davies Trust as stated in the staff report.
I second. Do we need to specify the amount?
No, that's fine, but we do need a 4/5 vote.
Okay. Motion by O'Neill, seconded by Beckmeyer. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vatterlas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
And the Roy Davies Trust Fund appropriation passes with a vote of 5-0.
And I would modify the recommended action as written. I would just modify that a bit and just say that we'd want a motion to move to adopt a resolution adopting the 2021 annual operating and capital budget presented to the council tonight with a general fund appropriation of $37 million and an all funds appropriation of $73 million.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Beckmeyer, seconded by O'Neill.
And for the vote, Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilmember Beer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vatterlas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
And that item passes with a vote of 5-0.
Congratulations, Lorenzo. Hats off to you, my friend.
Thank you all. And I really appreciate the council's support. And I also wanted to send a big thank you to all the department directors and especially City Manager Woodhouse for his support and the rest of the executive team here at the City of Pacifica, as well as you all, our City Council.
You're here. Thank you, Lorenzo. All right, with that, we will adjourn this evening at 10:13 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Everyone.
Good night.